I never mentioned the $2, $3 million I kept from my late husband's company. But when my daughter-in-law invited me to her charity dinner, the one she said I'd only embarrass, I dressed simply and smiled. The moment I stepped inside, her sponsor froze. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. That happened 3 months ago. Let me back up. My name is Dorothy Chen. I'm 66 years old, and I'm sending this story because you always ask for real accounts from listeners. This happened to me between October 2022 and June 2023 in San Francisco. Everything I'm about to tell you is true, even the parts that sound impossible. It started on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was sitting in my living room in Pacific Heights, the Victorian house Thomas and I bought in 1985 when we founded Chen Industries. The jasmine in the garden was blooming late that year. I remember because the scent came through the window, and for a moment I forgot that Thomas had been gone for 2 years. My phone buzzed. A text from Amber, my daughter-in-law. "Dorothy, Kevin and I are coming over. We need to talk about your future. Don't make plans for dinner." Not, "Hi, Mom." Not, "Is this a good time?" Just a command. That should have been my first warning. They arrived at 6:01 p.m. sharp. Amber was wearing one of those tight designer dresses that cost more than my monthly pension. Her phone already in her hand, filming. Kevin looked tired, thinner than I remembered. He worked in sales for a tech startup. Long hours. Constantly stressed about quotas. "Dorothy, sit down," Amber said, not even greeting me. She never called me Mom. Never even Dorothy with warmth. Just Dorothy. Flat and cold, like I was her accountant. I sat. Kevin wouldn't look at me. "We've been talking," Amber continued, perching on the arm of my sofa like she owned it. "This house is too big for you. You're alone, you're getting older, and honestly, you can barely handle the maintenance. We think you should sell." The house was worth $850,000. I knew because I'd had it appraised 6 months earlier, just to understand where I stood. "I'm not selling," I said quietly. Amber's eyes flashed. "Dorothy, be reasonable. You don't need all this space. You could move into a nice little apartment, something manageable. And Kevin and I, well, we're drowning here. We have $180,000 in debt. The wedding alone. The wedding you insisted on having at the Ritz for $65,000? I asked. My voice was still calm. 20 years of marriage to Thomas taught me to stay calm when people tried to bully me. "That's not fair," Kevin finally spoke. His voice was weak. "Mom, we're family. We're asking for help. You're asking me to sell my home so you can pay for your mistakes." Amber stood up abruptly. "Your mistakes? Dorothy, you've made plenty. Like hoarding money while your own son suffers. Do you know we're 3 months behind on rent? Do you even care?" Something inside me cracked. "I gave you $15,000 last Christmas. Where did it go?" Amber's face went red. She pointed her phone at me, and I realized she was live streaming. To her 55,000 Instagram followers. "Guys, look at my mother-in-law here," she said in that fake sweet influencer voice. "She thinks she understands finances, but she can barely use Venmo. Total dead weight in this family. She's sitting in $1 million house while we can't even afford groceries." I stared at her, at the phone, at Kevin, who was looking at the floor. "Get out of my house," I whispered. "What?" Amber laughed. "Dorothy, we're trying to help you. Get out!" I stood up, shaking. "Both of you. Now." They left. Amber was still recording, narrating about ungrateful elders and family toxicity. Kevin didn't say a single word. I sat in the dark for 3 hours after they left. The jasmine smell had turned sour. The next morning, I made ginger tea and tried to think clearly. I'd worked as Thomas's secret CFO for 18 years, from 1985 to 2003, doing the real accounting work while he presented everything to investors. He never credited me publicly. It was the 80s, and a Chinese woman handling finances wouldn't inspire confidence, he'd said. I loved him anyway, but I knew numbers. I knew how to protect myself. When we sold Chen Industries in 2020 for $3 million 6 months before Thomas died, I made sure my share went into a separate LLC, DC Holdings, $2, $3 million that nobody knew about. Not Kevin, not Uncle Raymond, Thomas's older brother who'd worked at the company, Nobody. I'd kept it secret because Thomas had always said, "Dorothy, if people know you have money, they'll find reasons why it should be theirs." He was right. That afternoon, I went to the bank to check our old joint account, the one Thomas and I had used for household expenses. It had about $50,000 in it when he died, enough to cover property taxes, utilities, small emergencies. The account was empty. "Excuse me?" I said to the teller, a young man with kind eyes. "There must be a mistake." He checked again. "Ma'am, according to our records, the account was emptied in 3 transactions over the past 2 months. September 15th, $20,000. October 3rd, $18,000. October 20th, $12,000. Who authorized this?" He turned his screen toward me. "You did, with this power of attorney document." I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, but I'd never signed any power of attorney. "Can I get a copy of this document?" He printed it. I took it home with shaking hands. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table under the yellow light, studying the forged signature. Whoever did this knew my handwriting well enough to fake it convincingly. Someone who'd seen me sign documents dozens of times. Kevin? Amber? I thought about my son. The boy I'd raised alone after Thomas started traveling constantly for business. The boy who used to bring me wildflowers from the park. The teenager who cried in my arms when his father forgot his birthday for the 3rd year in a row. When did he become this stranger who stood silent while his wife humiliated me on camera? I needed help. Real help. I called Margaret Foster, the lawyer who'd handled Thomas's estate. She was expensive, $450 an hour, but she was ruthless when she needed to be. "Dorothy," she said when I explained everything, "this is financial elder abuse, and if that signature is forged, it's felony fraud. I can take this case, but I need to warn you, if we pursue this, and Kevin or Amber are responsible, they could face criminal charges." "I understand," I said. "Are you sure? This is your son." I looked at the forged document on my table, at the screenshot I'd taken of Amber's live stream where she called me dead weight. "I'm sure," I said. "Get me the truth." I hung up and sat in the silence of my big, empty house. The jasmine was still blooming outside, sweet and indifferent. And somewhere in the darkness of my bedroom drawer, locked in a small metal box, was the real secret. The bank statements for DC Holdings. The $3 million they didn't know existed. I wasn't helpless. I'd just been invisible. But invisibility, I was starting to realize, could be a weapon. Margaret Foster called me 3 days later. Her voice was tight, professional anger barely contained. "Dorothy, the signature is definitely forged. I had it analyzed by 3 different handwriting experts. The pressure points are wrong. The loop formations are inconsistent. Whoever did this practiced, but not enough." I was sitting in my kitchen, the morning light making the empty fruit bowl look especially lonely. "Can you prove who did it?" "I'm working on it. But Dorothy, there's something else." I pulled Kevin and Amber's financial records, public records, credit reports, court filings. They're not just in debt. They're drowning. $180,000 total. Their rent is $2,400 a month, 3 months overdue. Their 2 cars have monthly payments of $1,800 combined. That's 60% of their income just for transportation. "How is that possible?" I asked, though I already knew. Amber's designer clothes, the expensive brunches she posted on Instagram, the trips to Napa, to Lake Tahoe, always smiling for the camera while the credit card debt piled higher. "They financed a lifestyle they couldn't afford," Margaret said, "and now they're desperate. Dorothy, desperate people do desperate things. I need you to be careful." I hung up and stared at the phone. Kevin was my son. I'd raised him alone, essentially, while Thomas built the company. Those years between 1985 and 2003 were a blur of exhaustion. The memory hit me suddenly, vividly. It was 1994. Kevin was 11. Thomas was in Hong Kong for 3 weeks, meeting with manufacturers. I'd put Kevin to bed at 9 p.m., read him 2 chapters of Harry Potter, kissed his forehead. Then I went downstairs to the dining room table and opened the company ledgers. From 10 p.m. until 2 a.m., I worked. Every night. Balancing accounts, finding discrepancies, tracking payments, managing cash flow. The real work of keeping Chen Industries alive. Thomas was brilliant at sales, at charm, at closing deals. But numbers? He barely understood a balance sheet. I did it all, in secret. Because in 1985, when we started the company, Thomas said investors wouldn't trust a Chinese woman with the money. "Let me be the face," he'd said. "You be the brain. We'll build this together." Except together meant I worked until 2 a.m., slept 4 hours, woke up to make Kevin breakfast, drove him to school, managed the household, then did it all again. For 18 years, no credit, no recognition, no name on the patents, on the contracts, on anything. The dining room table still had a small dent in the wood where I'd pressed too hard with my pen one night. So tired I could barely see straight. I ran my finger over it now. That dent was worth $2, $3 million. Nobody knew it but me. My phone rang. "Kevin." "Mom?" he said. His voice sounded hollow. "Can we come over? We need to talk." "About what?" A pause. "About finding a solution. For everyone." They arrived an hour later. Kevin looked worse than before. Dark circles under his eyes, his skin almost gray. Amber was polished as always, her hair in a perfect blonde wave, her smile sharp. "Dorothy," Amber started, sitting without being invited. "We've been talking to a real estate agent. Your house could sell for $850,000, maybe more. If you moved into a nice senior community, something around $2,000 a month, you'd have plenty left over, and you'd have help, companionship, activities." "I don't want activities," I said. "I want my home." "Mom," Kevin said softly, "please, we're asking for help, real help. We're going to lose everything." I looked at my son, really looked at him, the weight loss, the exhaustion. Something was wrong, something beyond money. "Kevin, are you sick?" He froze. Amber's smile flickered for just a second. "I'm fine," he said too quickly. "Just stressed. You've lost at least 20 pounds since I last saw you." "Mom, stop. We're here to talk about practical solutions. Are you seeing a doctor?" "Dorothy," Amber interrupted sharply, "this isn't about Kevin's health. This is about your house, your stubborn refusal to accept that you're getting older and need to simplify your life. We're trying to help you before you end up alone and unable to manage." "I manage just fine." "Do you?" Amber pulled out her phone. "Because I've been documenting things. Your erratic behavior, your paranoia, the way you accused us of stealing. Someone stole $50,000 from my account with a forged power of attorney." Amber's eyes widened, just slightly. Kevin looked at the floor. "That's absurd," Amber said. "You probably forgot you authorized it. Seniors often—" "I had it analyzed by forensic experts. The signature is fake." The silence that followed was thick, dangerous. "We should go," Kevin said suddenly, standing up. He looked pale, almost nauseous. "Kevin," Amber started. "Now, Amber." They left. I watched through the window as they argued on the sidewalk, Amber's hands gesturing sharply, Kevin shaking his head. That evening, I checked my email. There was a new message sent 2 hours ago from Natalie Brooks, N. Brooks, a Brooks Audit. Com. Subject: Urgent. Chen Industries irregularities. Dear Mrs. Chen, my name is Natalie Brooks. I'm a forensic auditor, and I was hired in 2019 to review Chen Industries' financial records before the sale. I need to speak with you urgently about irregularities I discovered regarding your brother-in-law, Raymond Chen. Specifically, I found evidence of systematic fund diversion totaling approximately $600,000 between 1998 and 2020. The matter was never reported because your husband's death complicated the investigation, but I believe you have a right to know. Please call me at your earliest convenience. This is time-sensitive. Regards, Natalie Brooks, CPA, CFE. I read it 3 times. Raymond, Thomas's older brother, the one who'd worked at Chen Industries from the beginning, who'd retired in 2020 with a generous pension, who'd always acted superior, like Thomas owed him everything. Raymond had stolen $600,000, and Thomas had never known. Or maybe he had, and never told me. I picked up my phone to call Natalie, then stopped. Someone was knocking on my door. Hard, insistent. I looked through the peephole. Amber. Alone this time. I opened the door with the chain still on. "Dorothy," she said, her voice suddenly sweet, pleading. "We need to talk. Really talk. Woman to woman. Can I come in?" "No." "Please. It's about Kevin. He made me promise not to tell you, but he's sick, Dorothy. Really sick. And we can't afford the treatment without selling the house. Please, I'm begging you." Her eyes were wet with tears. Real tears. For a moment, I almost believed her. Then I saw it. The phone in her hand, screen facing me, recording. "Get off my property," I said quietly. "And if you come back, I'm calling the police." I closed the door and locked it. All 3 locks. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions. You don't want to know the answers." I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the house felt like a threat. The old pipes settling, the wind against the windows, footsteps that weren't there. By dawn, I'd drunk 4 cups of ginger tea and convinced myself I was losing my mind. That's what they want, I thought. They want you to doubt yourself. At 8 a.m., I called Natalie Brooks. "Mrs. Chen," she answered on the second ring. "Thank you for calling. I know this must be shocking." "Tell me everything," I said. She took a breath. Between 1998 and 2020, Raymond Chen systematically diverted funds from Chen Industries. Small amounts at first, $5,000 here, $8,000 there. By the end, he was taking $40,000 at a time. He used a shell company, falsified invoices, created fake vendor accounts. It was sophisticated. Why didn't my husband know? I think he suspected something near the end, but he died before we could complete the investigation. Mrs. Chen, there's something else. After Thomas died, Raymond spread rumors in the business community that your husband had been embezzling. He was preemptively protecting himself. My hands went cold. He blamed Thomas? Yes. And because Thomas wasn't alive to defend himself, people believed it. I'm sorry. I thought of the funeral. The way some of Thomas's old colleagues had avoided eye contact with me. The whispers. I'd thought it was just grief, awkwardness around widows. They'd thought my husband was a thief. Raymond is 70 years old now, Natalie continued. Retired, living comfortably in Sausalito on stolen money. Mrs. Chen, I can help you recover some of those funds, but it will require legal action. And there's one more thing you should know. What? Raymond's wife contacted me 2 months ago. She said he's been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. She's worried about what happens when the truth comes out. I think someone close to you might know about this diagnosis. Who? I don't know for certain, but someone's been asking questions about Raymond's finances. Someone who knows the money exists. Amber. It had to be Amber. I thanked Natalie and hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I walked through my house in a daze, past the living room where Kevin used to build Lego castles, past the kitchen where Thomas and I drank coffee every Sunday morning for 43 years, past the bedroom I now slept in alone. I stopped at Thomas's old office. I hadn't touched it since he died. His desk was still covered with papers, his reading glasses folded on top of a ledger from 2019. I opened the desk drawers methodically, insurance documents, old tax returns, and then in the bottom drawer a small wooden box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, handwritten, addressed to me but never sent. I picked up the one on top, dated March 2020, 4 months before he died. My dearest Dorothy, I'm a coward for not giving you these letters. I'm a coward for many things. Raymond has been stealing from the company for years. I've known since 2015 but couldn't prove it without destroying the family. He's my brother. I kept thinking I could fix it quietly, make him pay it back somehow. I was wrong. You were always the strong one, the smart one. I built nothing. You built everything, and I took credit because I was too proud to admit that my wife was smarter than me. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Please, Dorothy, take what's yours. Protect yourself. Don't let them take advantage of you the way I did. I love you. I'm sorry I never said it enough. Thomas. I sat on the floor and cried for the first time since his funeral. Not for the money, for the loneliness, for 43 years of being invisible while everyone else took credit, took money, took everything. For 5 days, I barely left the house. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't check email. I sat in Thomas's office and read every letter he'd never sent me. Apologies, confessions, love notes he was too proud to say out loud. On the 6th day, I forced myself to function. I made tea. I opened my laptop. I checked my bank accounts. And I saw something strange. My PayPal account, which I barely used, showed a payment history I didn't recognize. 73 transactions over the past 8 months. Items sold. Money deposited. I clicked through. The listings were for my things. Vintage jade bracelet. $380 set of 6 Limoges porcelain teacups. $520 first edition Steinbeck novels. $890 gold fountain pen, engraved. $440, 73 items. Total, $12,000. The seller name was Amber Style, SF. I felt something inside me go very cold and very quiet. I called Margaret Foster. Dorothy, she said. I've been trying to reach you for days. Are you all right? I need you to do something, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like someone else, someone harder. I need you to freeze Amber's eBay account and file a police report for theft. I have evidence of 73 stolen items sold online. And I need you to subpoena Kevin and Amber's financial records. All of them. Dorothy, if we do this, I know what happens. Do it anyway. That evening, my phone rang. Kevin. Mom, we need to talk. In person. Tonight. It's important. Something in his voice made me pause. Not anger, fear. Come over, I said. He arrived alone 30 minutes later. He'd lost more weight. His hands were shaking. Mom, he said, standing in my doorway like a stranger, I need to tell you something, and Amber doesn't know I'm here. I'm sick. I have cancer. Stage 2. Treatable. But I need surgery and chemo. The insurance covers some of it, but not all. We need about $95,000 out of pocket. I stared at my son. When were you diagnosed? 4 months ago. 4 months, and you're telling me now? Amber said we couldn't. She said if you knew, you'd use it to manipulate us, to make us feel guilty for asking about the house. She said we had to wait until after you agreed to sell. The words hung in the air between us. She hid your cancer diagnosis from me for 4 months, I said slowly, so she could manipulate me into selling my house. Kevin's face crumpled. Mom, I'm so tired. I'm so tired of lying, of fighting, of pretending everything's fine when I'm dying inside. You're not dying, I said. But your marriage is? He looked up at me with hollow eyes. What? I'm going to help you, Kevin. I'm going to pay for your treatment. Every penny. But Amber doesn't get to know that. Not yet. Do you understand? I don't trust me, I said. For once in your life, trust your mother. After he left, I sat in the dark and made a list. A very specific list. Margaret Foster's number was first, then Natalie Brooks, then a private investigator Margaret had recommended, and at the bottom of the list, I wrote 3 words, Fairmont Hotel, March 15th, the charity dinner Amber had told me I'd embarrass, the one where she'd be networking with San Francisco's elite, playing philanthropist with money she didn't have. I picked up my phone and called Natalie. Natalie, it's Dorothy Chen, that charity dinner you're hosting at the Fairmont, the one for fraud prevention research? Yes? I'd like to make a donation, a significant one, $500,000. But I have one condition. Margaret Foster didn't waste time. By Monday morning, she'd filed a police report for the eBay thefts and sent a cease and desist letter to Amber, demanding return of all stolen property and $12,000 in restitution. By Monday afternoon, Amber was calling me. 14 times. I didn't answer. On Tuesday, she showed up at my house. I watched through the window as she pounded on the door, her face red, her designer coat flapping in the wind. Dorothy, open this door. You can't do this to me. Those were gifts. You gave me those things. I turned up the volume on my tea kettle until I couldn't hear her anymore. She finally left after 20 minutes. I watched her get into her leased BMW, $847 a month according to the financial records Margaret had obtained, and speed away. Wednesday morning, Margaret called with an update. The forensic handwriting analysis is complete. The power of attorney was definitely forged, and we have a 94% confidence match that it was Amber. Her handwriting samples from the wedding contract and rental agreements show identical pressure patterns and loop formations. Can we prove she's the one who withdrew the money? The bank has surveillance footage. I'm getting the court order today. Dorothy, there's more. The private investigator found something. Amber's been in contact with a lawyer specializing in elder incompetency cases. She had a consultation 6 weeks ago about having you declared mentally unfit. The words should have shocked me. They didn't. I'd already passed shock. I was somewhere colder now. What else? I asked. The investigator tracked her movements. 2 months ago, she visited Raymond Chen at his home in Sausalito. 3 times. She told his wife she was checking on family. But according to the investigator, she was asking Raymond questions about the company finances, about your inheritance, about his health condition. She knows about the Alzheimer's, I said. Yes. And Dorothy, this is where it gets complicated. The investigator found evidence that Amber was planning to have Raymond declared incompetent so she could access his estate as concerned family. She was going to claim the money he stole was rightfully yours, then position herself as your representative to claim it. I closed my eyes. The plan was brilliant in its cruelty. Frame the old man with dementia, claim moral high ground, steal everything. What's our next move? I asked. We go nuclear, Margaret said. We file criminal charges for theft, fraud, and elder abuse. We sue for damages. We get restraining orders. Dorothy, this will destroy them financially. Are you prepared for that? I thought of Kevin. Sick, scared, trapped in a marriage to a woman who'd hidden his cancer diagnosis so she could manipulate his dying mother. Yes, I said. Do it. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. I was scrolling through my phone, something I rarely did, when I saw Amber's Instagram account trending. Not in a good way. She'd gotten into a public fight with another influencer, a woman named Jessica Hartley who had 200,000 followers. The fight was about a gifted handbag. Amber claimed Jessica had stolen her collaboration opportunity with a luxury brand. The comments were vicious. Amber, you're so entitled. Maybe if you didn't scam elderly people, you could afford your own bags? Your mother-in-law was right about you. Someone had leaked the story. About the eBay sales, about the forged power of attorney, about everything. I hadn't done it. Margaret wouldn't have, which meant someone else was watching. Someone who wanted to see Amber burn. Over the next 3 days, I watched her follower count drop. 55,000, then 48,000, then 35,000, then 15,000. Brand deals canceled, sponsorships revoked. Her comment section became a wasteland of people calling her a fraud, a thief, a disgrace. The karma was immediate and brutal. Friday evening, Kevin called. Mom, Amber's falling apart. She's locked herself in the bathroom. She won't eat. She keeps saying everyone's turned against her, that someone's trying to destroy her life. Someone is, I said quietly. She destroyed her own life, Kevin. I'm just making sure everyone sees it. Mom, please. She's talking about hurting herself. Then call 911. I'm not responsible for her mental health. I'm only responsible for protecting myself from her. Silence on the line. Then Kevin's voice, very small. When did you become so cold? When my son stood by while his wife tried to steal everything I had. When he hid his own cancer from me so she could manipulate me. When he chose her over me, every single time, until there was nothing left to choose. I hung up. Saturday morning, Margaret called with news that made my blood sing. We got the bank surveillance footage. It's Amber. Clear as day. 3 separate withdrawals, using the forged power of attorney. The DA's office is reviewing the case for criminal prosecution. Dorothy, she's looking at felony fraud. 2 to 5 years if convicted. And the eBay thefts? Separate charges. Grand theft. Another 18 months to 3 years. Kevin? I asked. No evidence he participated directly. He might be charged as an accessory if we can prove knowledge, But right now, it looks like Amber acted alone. I should have felt relief. I felt nothing. There's one more thing, Margaret said. I spoke with Natalie Brooks about the charity dinner. She's agreed to your condition. You'll be announced as the primary donor, $500,000 to the Fraud Prevention Research Foundation. The announcement will be made at 8 p.m., right before the keynote speech. Amber and Kevin are on the guest list. They won't know you're there until you walk in. Perfect, I said. Sunday, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went shopping. Not at thrift stores or discount outlets. At the boutiques on Union Square where women like Amber pretended to belong. I bought a simple black dress, elegant, expensive, the kind that whispered money instead of screaming it. I bought pearl earrings. I bought shoes that cost more than a month of Amber's rent. When I got home, I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like someone who'd been invisible for 66 years and had finally decided to be seen. Monday morning, Margaret called with the final piece. Dorothy, I need you to make a decision. The DA wants to move forward with charges against Amber, but they're offering a deal. If she pleads guilty and agrees to full restitution, they'll reduce the sentence to 18 months, eligible for parole in 9. What if she doesn't take it? Then we go to trial. Could be 2 to 5 years, but trials are unpredictable. She might walk. I thought about it. About Amber in prison for 5 years. About Kevin, sick and alone, visiting his wife in a correctional facility. Tell the DA I want to meet with Amber first, I said. Before she takes any deal, I want to look her in the eyes and tell her exactly what she took from me. Dorothy, that's not advisable. I don't care. Set it up. That evening, I sat in my kitchen and did something I'd been avoiding. I opened my laptop and looked at Kevin's medical records, the ones he'd finally sent me, along with a desperate email begging for help. Stage 2 testicular cancer, treatable. Survival rate, 95% with proper treatment. Treatment cost, $140,000 total. Insurance covered $45,000. He needed $95,000. I had $2. $3 million sitting in an account nobody knew existed. I could save him easily. I would save him, but I would make sure he understood exactly what it cost. I pulled up my bank account and initiated a wire transfer, not to Kevin, to the hospital directly, $95,000. Full payment for his treatment, scheduled to begin in 2 weeks. Then I sent Kevin an email. Kevin, your cancer treatment has been paid in full. You start chemotherapy on March 20th. The hospital has all the details. I'm doing this because you're my son, and I love you. But I'm not doing this for Amber, and I'm not doing this because I forgive you. You stood by while she tried to destroy me. You lied to me. You hid your illness to manipulate me. Those are facts. After your treatment is complete, you and I will have a conversation about what kind of relationship we can have going forward. If we can have one at all. Until then, stay away from my house. Mom, I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Wednesday night, 2 days before the charity dinner, I got a call from an unknown number. Mrs. Chen? A woman's voice, shaking. This is Raymond's wife, Susan. Please, you have to stop this. Raymond is sick. He doesn't even remember what he did. If you press charges, it will kill him. Susan, I said gently, I'm not pressing charges against Raymond. I know he has Alzheimer's. I know he's sick. Then why? Because your nephew's wife tried to exploit his illness. She was going to have him declared incompetent so she could steal what he stole from me. I'm protecting Raymond from Amber, not prosecuting him. Silence. Then crying. I didn't know, Susan whispered. I didn't know she was... I know. It's okay. Susan, I'm going to help you. I'm going to pay for Raymond's care. A good facility, the best neurologists. But in exchange, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to come to the Fairmont Hotel this Friday night, 8 p.m., and I need you to be ready to tell the truth. The Fairmont Grand Ballroom looked like something from a movie. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, 400 people in evening wear drinking champagne and pretending to care about fraud prevention. I arrived at 7:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the donor announcement. Natalie Brooks met me at a side entrance, away from the main crowd. Dorothy, she said, squeezing my hand. Are you sure about this? I was wearing the black dress, the pearls, the expensive shoes. My hair was done. My makeup was subtle but perfect. I looked like old money, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. I'm sure, I said. They're here, table 12 near the front. Amber's been working the room for an hour, networking like her life depends on it. It does, I said quietly. Natalie led me to a private room behind the stage. Susan Chen was waiting there, nervous, clutching her purse. Mrs. Chen, she said when she saw me, thank you for helping Raymond. The facility you arranged, it's beautiful. He's comfortable there. He's family, I said. Even after everything, he's still family. Susan, are you ready to tell people what Amber did? She nodded, tears in her eyes. She came to our house 3 times. She told me she was concerned about Raymond, that she wanted to help. But she kept asking about his finances, about his accounts, about whether he had power of attorney documents. The 3rd time, she brought papers for me to sign. She said they were just health proxies, but I showed them to a lawyer friend. They would have given her control of everything. Did you sign them? No. I asked her to leave. She got angry, said I was being difficult, that I'd regret not trusting her. Then she stopped coming. I thought maybe I'd overreacted, but now— You didn't overreact, I said. You saved your husband from being exploited by someone who saw his illness as an opportunity. At 8 p.m., Natalie walked onto the stage. The room quieted. I stood in the wings watching. I could see table 12 from here. Amber in a red dress that probably cost $800 she didn't have. Kevin beside her in a suit that hung loose on his thin frame. They were both smiling, playing the part of the successful young couple. Good evening, everyone, Natalie began. Tonight, we're honored to announce a transformational gift to the Fraud Prevention Research Foundation. A donation of $500,000 from someone who understands personally the devastating impact of financial fraud on families. Amber leaned forward, interested, probably calculating how to network with whoever had that kind of money. This donor wishes to remain anonymous in name only, Natalie continued. But she's here tonight, and she's agreed to say a few words about why this cause matters to her. Please welcome Dorothy Chen. I walked onto the stage. The room erupted in polite applause. But at table 12, Amber's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Kevin's face went white. I took the microphone. My hands were steady. Thank you, Natalie. I'm Dorothy Chen. Many of you don't know me, though some of you knew my late husband, Thomas, who founded Chen Industries. For 18 years, I worked as the company's chief financial officer, unofficially. My husband took the credit. I took the late nights, the stress, the invisible labor, some uncomfortable shifting in the audience. This wasn't the usual feel-good donor speech. When we sold the company in 2020, I made sure my contribution was recognized financially, if not publicly. I put $2, $3 million into a private account. I told no one. Not my son. Not my family. No one. Amber was staring at me like I was a ghost. Kevin had his head in his hands. 3 months ago, I discovered that someone had forged a power of attorney in my name and stolen $50,000 from my household account. Then I discovered that my belongings, jewelry, books, family heirlooms, had been sold online without my knowledge. 73 items. $12,000 total. The room was completely silent now. The person who did this is my daughter-in-law. She's here tonight. Table 12. 400 heads turned. Amber stood up, her face red. This is insane. You're having some kind of episode. I have bank surveillance footage, I said calmly. I have forensic handwriting analysis. I have eBay transaction records with your account name. I have everything, Amber. Kevin grabbed Amber's arm, trying to pull her back down. She jerked away from him. But that's not the worst part, I continued. 4 months ago, my son was diagnosed with cancer. Stage 2, treatable, survivable. His wife decided not to tell me. She hid his diagnosis because she wanted to use it as leverage to force me to sell my house. She let me believe my son was healthy, while she planned to manipulate me with his illness at the right moment. Kevin stood up now, swaying. Mom, Sit down, Kevin, I said, not unkindly, but firmly. I'm not finished. I turned back to the audience. There's more. My brother-in-law, Raymond Chen, is 70 years old. He has early-stage Alzheimer's. He also embezzled $600,000 from my husband's company over 20 years. I only discovered this after my husband died. I gestured to Susan, who walked onto the stage, trembling. This is Susan Chen, Raymond's wife. Susan, tell them what Amber did. Susan's voice shook, but she spoke clearly. Amber came to my house 3 times. She asked questions about Raymond's finances, about his mental state. Then she brought legal documents that would have given her control of his assets. She told me it was for his own good, that he needed protection. But when I showed the papers to a lawyer, I learned they would have made her his legal guardian. She was going to declare my husband incompetent so she could steal what he'd already stolen. The room erupted, voices overlapping, gasps. Someone said, "Oh my God." Amber was backing toward the exit. "You can't prove any of this." "I can," I said, "and I have. The district attorney has reviewed all the evidence. There are police officers waiting outside this ballroom right now." Kevin suddenly stood up, stumbled, and vomited into the $5,000 floral centerpiece. The sound was horrible in the shocked silence. He looked up at me, his face green, tears streaming. "Mom," he whispered. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about Raymond. I didn't know she was—" "You knew enough," I said quietly. "You knew she forged documents. You knew she was selling my things. You knew she hid your cancer from me. You knew, Kevin. Maybe you didn't know everything, but you knew enough to stop her, and you didn't." Amber made a run for it. She almost made it to the door before 2 police officers stepped inside. "Amber Chen," one of them said, "you're under arrest for felony fraud, grand theft, and attempted elder abuse." She screamed, actually screamed like a child throwing a tantrum. "This is entrapment! You can't!" They read her rights while she struggled. The handcuffs clicked shut. 400 people watched in stunned silence as she was escorted out, still screaming about lawsuits, about her rights, about how I'd pay for this. Kevin collapsed back into his chair, sobbing. I walked off the stage and straight to him. I knelt down beside his chair, my expensive dress pooling on the floor. "Kevin," I said softly, "look at me." He did. His eyes were red, destroyed. "Your treatment starts in 5 days," I said. "I've paid for everything. You're going to live. You're going to beat this cancer. But after that, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about who you want to be. The man who stood by while his wife tried to destroy his mother, or the man I raised. The choice is yours." "I'm sorry," he choked out. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "I know," I said, "but sorry isn't enough yet. It's a start, but it's not enough." I stood up and walked back to Natalie, who was staring at me with something between horror and admiration. "Well," she said. That was the most memorable donor speech in Foundation history. "Good," I said. "Now people will remember why fraud prevention matters. Because it's not about money. It's about families destroying each other over it." I left through the side door. Behind me, I could hear the ballroom erupting into chaos. 400 voices all talking at once. I got into my car, drove home, and made myself a cup of ginger tea. Then I sat in my kitchen and cried for 2 hours straight. Not for Amber. Not even for Kevin. For the life I'd thought I had. The family I'd thought I had. The safety I'd thought existed. All of it, gone. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom and watched Amber Chen be sentenced to 18 months in prison. She'd taken the plea deal, guilty to felony fraud, grand theft, and attempted exploitation of a vulnerable adult. 18 months eligible for parole in 9. Restitution of $67,000, which she'd never be able to pay. She didn't look at me during sentencing. Her lawyer had advised her not to. Kevin wasn't there. He was at his 3rd chemotherapy session. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, looked at Amber with the kind of disappointment that cuts deeper than anger. "Ms. Chen," she said, "you targeted a 66-year-old widow who trusted you as family. You forged legal documents. You stole irreplaceable family heirlooms. You attempted to exploit an elderly man with dementia. And perhaps most cruel of all, You hid your own husband's cancer diagnosis to use it as a manipulation tool against his mother. Amber's lawyer tried to interject. The judge held up her hand. I've read the victim impact statement from Mrs. Dorothy Chen. I've rarely seen such a clear case of calculated, cold-blooded financial abuse. 18 months is lenient, in my opinion. I hope you use that time to reflect on who you've become. The gavel came down. Amber was led away in handcuffs. She looked small suddenly, diminished. Nothing like the confident influencer who'd called me dead weight 3 months ago. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no victory. Just tired. Outside the courthouse, Margaret Foster put her hand on my shoulder. How are you holding up? I don't know yet, I said honestly. Kevin texted me that evening. Mom, I heard about the sentencing. Can I see you? I stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., my house. He arrived exactly on time, which was new. Kevin had never been punctual in his life. He'd lost more weight. The chemotherapy was brutal. His skin had a grayish pallor, and he was wearing a knit cap to cover his hair loss. But his eyes were different. Clearer, more present than I'd seen them in years. Mom, he said at the door, thank you for seeing me. I let him in, made him ginger tea, the way I'd done when he was a child with a stomachache. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd discovered the forged documents 3 months ago. How's treatment? I asked. Hard, really hard, but the doctors say the tumors are shrinking. They're optimistic. He wrapped his hands around the mug. Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything. I nodded. I knew, he said. Not everything, but I knew enough. I knew Amber was taking your things and selling them because I saw her photograph your jewelry box. I knew she was obsessed with your money because she talked about it constantly. How unfair it was that you had a house and savings while we were drowning. I knew she forged something because I saw her practicing your signature on a notepad. His voice cracked, and I didn't stop her. I told myself it was just small things, that you wouldn't miss them, that we needed the money more than you did. I told myself you'd want to help us if you knew how bad things were. I told myself so many lies, Mom. Tears were running down his face now. When she hid my cancer from you, I should have told you immediately. But I was scared. Scared of dying. Scared of being alone. Scared that if I stood up to her, I'd lose everything. So I let her use my illness as a weapon against you. I let her turn my cancer into a manipulation tool. He looked up at me. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. I'm just asking you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, what I didn't do, and I hate myself for it. I took a sip of my tea. Let the silence sit between us. Kevin, I said finally, I paid for your treatment because you're my son, and I love you. That hasn't changed. But love and trust are different things. I love you. I don't trust you. Not yet. I know. You're 40 years old. You're not a child who was manipulated by a bad spouse. You're a grown man who made choices, bad choices, cowardly choices. You chose comfort over integrity. You chose Amber over me, over and over, until there was nothing left to choose. He nodded, crying harder now. But, I continued, you're also my son who's fighting cancer, who's finally telling the truth, who showed up today knowing I might turn you away. That counts for something. Not enough yet, but something. What do I need to do? He asked. To earn your trust back? Time, I said. And consistency. And therapy. Lots of therapy. You need to understand why you let yourself become someone who'd stand by while his wife tried to destroy his mother. Until you understand that, we can't move forward. I'll do it, he said immediately. Whatever it takes. I hope so, I said, because I miss my son. But I don't know if he still exists, or if Amber destroyed him completely. We sat in silence for a while. Then Kevin spoke again, his voice small. Mom, can I ask you something? Why didn't you tell me about the $3 million? All those years, why did you keep it secret? I looked at him, really looked at him. Because your father taught me that when people know you have money, they stop seeing you as a person. They see you as a solution to their problems, a bank, an inheritance, an opportunity. And he was right. Would you? I interrupted. Would you have seen me the same way? Or would you have seen dollar signs? Would Amber have married you if she'd known I had millions? Would she have treated me with respect? Or would she have just been nicer while planning the same thing? He couldn't answer. We both knew the truth. Kevin left an hour later. Before he walked out, he hugged me. A real hug. Tight and desperate. The way he used to hug me when he was small and scared of thunderstorms. "I love you, Mom," he whispered. "I know, Kevin," I said. "I know you do." But I didn't say it back. Not yet. After he left, I sat in my living room and looked around. The house felt different now. Lighter. Like something heavy had been lifted. I'd sold it 2 weeks ago. Got $870,000. More than expected. The new owners were a young family with 3 kids who loved the Jasmine Garden. My new place was a 2-bedroom condo in No Valley. Smaller. Modern. No memories of Thomas, of Kevin's childhood, of 43 years of invisible labor. Just mine. I'd donated $300,000 to Alzheimer's research in Raymond's name. The irony wasn't lost on me, using his stolen money to help people with his disease. But it felt right. I'd kept $1.5 million invested conservatively, enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life, and then some. And for the first time in 66 years, I'd started taking art classes. Oil painting. I was terrible at it, but it didn't matter. Nobody was grading me. Nobody was judging. I was just doing something for myself. Yesterday, Kevin had texted me a photo. Him, bald from chemo, giving a thumbs up in the hospital. The caption, "Scan came back clear. Tumors are gone. Last treatment next week." I'd responded, "I'm proud of you. Keep fighting." He'd sent back, "I love you, Mom." This time I'd written, "I know. We'll talk after treatment is done." Not, "I love you too." Not yet. Maybe not ever, but maybe. That's the thing about forgiveness. It's not a switch you flip. It's not a single moment of grace. It's a series of small decisions, made over months and years, to keep the door open even when you want to slam it shut. Kevin calls me every week now, tells me about treatment, about his new therapist, about the divorce proceedings. He's moved into a studio apartment in the Tenderloin, works part-time at a bookstore, lives simply. He's rebuilding himself from nothing. Whether he becomes someone I can trust again, that's still an open question. Last week, he asked if he could come to my art class, watch me paint. I said yes. He sat in the back of the studio for 2 hours. Quiet. Respectful. Afterward, he said, "You're really good, Mom." I laughed. "I'm really not." "You're doing something you love," he said. "That makes you good at it." It was the wisest thing I'd heard him say in years. This morning, I got a letter from Amber in prison. I haven't opened it yet. It's sitting on my kitchen counter next to my coffee. I don't know if I'll read it. I don't know if anything she has to say matters anymore. What I do know is this. I spent 43 years being invisible, being the brain while men took credit, being the money while people took advantage, being the mother while my son chose someone else. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm Dorothy Chen. I'm 66 years old. I have $1, $5 million in the bank, a condo with a view, and a son who might, maybe, become someone worth knowing again. And that's enough. For now, it's enough. 1 year after the Fairmont Hotel, I received a call that changed everything again. It was Kevin. His voice was different, stronger, steadier than I'd heard in years. "Mom, I need to show you something. Can you meet me at the old house?" The Victorian in Pacific Heights had been sold for 11 months. The new family had painted it sage green, added a swing set in the backyard. I hadn't been back since moving day. "Why there?" I asked. "Just trust me. Please." I almost said no. Trust was still a fragile thing between us, but something in his voice made me say yes. I arrived at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. Kevin was waiting on the sidewalk, holding a shoebox. He looked completely different, healthy. His hair had grown back, darker than before. He'd gained weight, the good kind. His eyes were clear. "You look good," I said carefully. "I feel good. 2 months cancer-free. Doctor says my prognosis is excellent." He smiled, but it was tentative. "Mom, I need to give you this." He handed me the shoebox. Inside were envelopes, dozens of them, addressed to me, stamped but never mailed. "What is this?" "Letters," he said. I wrote you one every week for the past year. My therapist suggested it, writing down what I wanted to say but wasn't ready to say yet. Some of them are apologies, some are memories, some are just me trying to figure out who I am without Amber, without the lies. I pulled out the top envelope, opened it. Dear Mom, week 23. Today in therapy I realized something. I spent 20 years being angry at Dad for choosing work over us, for missing my games, my graduation, my wedding, for being invisible when I needed him. But I did the exact same thing to you. I chose Amber over you. I chose money over integrity. I chose comfort over truth. I became exactly what I hated about him. I don't know if you can forgive that. I don't know if I can forgive myself, but I'm trying. I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your son again. Love, Kevin. My hands were shaking. I looked up at him. Why didn't you mail these? Because I needed to be ready for whatever your answer was. If you read them and decided you were done with me, really done, I needed to be strong enough to accept that. He took a breath. Mom, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me prove I've changed, however long it takes. I looked at the house behind him, the sage green paint, the swing set, a child's bicycle on the porch. I come here sometimes, Kevin said quietly, just to remember. The good parts. You reading Harry Potter to me, the jasmine in spring, the way you'd make ginger tea when I was sick. I took all of that for granted. I let Amber make me think you were the problem, when really I was just too weak to stand up for what was right. Kevin, let me finish, please. His voice cracked. A year ago, you told me sorry wasn't enough. You were right, so I've spent this year trying to be enough. I got a real job, assistant manager at the bookstore now. I'm paying my own rent, my own bills. I'm in therapy twice a week. I volunteer at an elder advocacy center, helping seniors recognize financial abuse. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo, him with a group of elderly people, all smiling, holding certificates. I teach classes on protecting yourself from family fraud. I tell them my story, how I let my wife steal from my mother, how I was complicit through silence. I tell them so maybe they won't be. I stared at the photo, at my son, transformed. I'm not the man I was a year ago, Mom, and I'll never be that man again. But I understand if it's too late, if I destroyed something that can't be rebuilt. I looked down at the shoebox. 52 letters, one for every week. 52 attempts to reach me, even when I'd told him I needed space. Did you read Dad's letters? I asked suddenly. The ones he wrote but never sent? Kevin nodded. You let me read them after the sentencing. They broke my heart. All that regret. All that love he couldn't say out loud. Mom, I don't want to be him. I don't want to die with words left unsaid. Then say them now, I said. Everything. No more waiting. He looked at me, tears streaming. I love you. I'm sorry. I was wrong. You deserved better from me, and I failed you in every possible way. You're the strongest person I know, and I spent years treating you like you were weak, like you were the burden, when really I was. Keep going, I said. I'm proud of you, for standing up to Amber, for protecting yourself, for not letting me manipulate you with my cancer, for being brave enough to walk into that hotel and tell the truth in front of 400 people. You're my hero, Mom. You always have been. I set the shoebox down on the sidewalk, stepped forward, put my arms around my son. He collapsed into me, sobbing like a child, like the little boy who used to bring me wildflowers, like the teenager who cried on my shoulder when his father forgot his birthday. I love you too, I whispered. I never stopped, even when I didn't trust you, even when I was so angry I couldn't see straight. I never stopped loving you. We stood there on the sidewalk for 10 minutes, holding each other while strangers walked past and the new family's children played in what used to be our garden. Finally, I pulled back, looked at him. Kevin, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. Okay. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's not erasing what happened. You hurt me. Deeply. You chose Amber over me for years, and that pain doesn't just disappear because you've changed. His face fell. I know. But, I continued, forgiveness is also not holding the past over you forever. It's choosing to believe that people can grow, That mistakes don't have to define us. That my son, the real one, the one I raised, is still in there somewhere. He is, Kevin said fiercely. I promise you, Mom, he is. Then prove it. Not with words. With time, with consistency, with showing up every day and being the man you say you want to be. I will, however long it takes. I picked up the shoebox. I'm going to read these, all of them, and then we're going to have dinner, once a week. Just us. No talk of money, no talk of Amber, no talk of the past. Just us, rebuilding. His face transformed. Really? Really. But Kevin, if you ever lie to me again, if you ever choose someone else over your integrity, over truth, over family, we're done. Permanently. Do you understand? I understand. Good. I smiled at him. Actually smiled for the first time in a year. Now tell me about this bookstore job. Are you getting an employee discount? Because I'm taking art classes and I need books on oil painting techniques. He laughed. It was a beautiful sound. We walked to a cafe 3 blocks away, sat outside in the October sunshine, ordered tea and pastries, talked about small things, his co-workers, my painting class, the best walking routes in No Valley. For the first time in years, it felt easy, light, like maybe we could find our way back to each other after all. That evening, I went home and read all 52 letters. Some made me cry. Some made me angry all over again. Some made me proud of the man he was becoming. The last letter, written just 3 days ago, was the shortest. Dear Mom, Week 52. 1 year of letters. 1 year of therapy. 1 year of learning to be honest, first with myself, then with the world. I don't know if you'll ever fully forgive me. But I forgive you for being human, for not being perfect, for doing your best in an impossible situation. And I forgive myself for being weak. Not because weakness is okay, but because holding on to shame forever doesn't help anyone. Tomorrow I'm going to ask if we can have dinner. If you say no, I'll understand. But I hope you say yes, because I miss my mom. And I think, maybe, just maybe, she might miss me too. Love always, Kevin. I folded the letter carefully, put it back in the box with the others, placed the box on my bookshelf, next to Thomas's letters. 2 generations of men who loved me but didn't know how to show it until it was almost too late. The difference was, Kevin still had time. We both did. 3 months later, I attended Kevin's 1-year work anniversary party at the bookstore. He'd been promoted to manager. His co-workers loved him. He'd even started mentoring a teenager from a troubled home, teaching him about inventory management and responsibility. I watched him laugh with his colleagues, confident and whole, and barely recognized the broken man from the Fairmont Hotel. That night, as we walked to our cars, he said, Mom, I have something to tell you. I've been seeing someone. Her name is Claire. She's a teacher. I've been taking it slow, but it's getting serious, and I wanted you to know before you introduce us? I asked. Yeah, if that's okay. It's okay, but Kevin, I need to meet her, really meet her. Know who she is, what she values, whether she treats you with respect. She does, he said quickly. She's nothing like Amber. Nothing. Good. Then I'd like to meet her. 2 weeks later, I had dinner with Kevin and Claire. She was 38, kind, funny, and refreshingly normal. She taught 5th grade. She'd been married before, divorced amicably. She asked me thoughtful questions and didn't once mention money. When Kevin went to the bathroom, she leaned toward me. Mrs. Chen? Kevin told me everything. What happened with Amber, what he did, how he hurt you. I want you to know. I see who he is now, and I think he's someone worth knowing. So do I said. But I'm watching. If he ever treats you the way he enabled Amber to treat me, you'll destroy him, she said with a small smile. He told me that too. Good. He should be held accountable. I liked her immediately. Now, as I sit here writing this final chapter, it's been 18 months since the Fairmont Hotel. Amber gets out of prison in 3 months. I've had no contact with her, and I don't plan to. Raymond passed away peacefully 2 months ago. Susan thanked me for paying for his care until the end. At the funeral, she told me, "You gave him dignity when he didn't deserve it." Kevin and Claire are engaged. The wedding is small, simple, nothing like the $65,000 disaster with Amber. I'm helping with the planning, not the money, the planning. He insisted on paying for everything himself. I'm still painting, still terrible at it, still happy. And sometimes, late at night, I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, invisible, taken for granted, convinced that love meant sacrifice without boundaries. That woman is gone. In her place is someone who knows her worth, who sets boundaries, who loves fiercely but wisely. Someone who learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing growth over grudges. My son isn't perfect, neither am I, but we're trying, together, and that's enough. At the family dinner, I read the message. Don't drink the glass she served. I pushed the wine aside. Within minutes, my son was screaming for help. The police arrived before dessert, and my daughter-in-law lost her smile and her disguise.
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
But let me start from the beginning, because the truth about that October night in Portland deserves to be told exactly as it happened. My name is Linda Hayes. I'm 64 years old, a widow, and until 3 days ago, I believed I understood my family. I was wrong about almost everything. The dinner was supposed to celebrate my birthday. Kenneth, my son, had called me 2 weeks earlier with that excited voice he used to have when he was a boy. Mom, Melissa and I want to throw you a special dinner. Just the 4 of us, you, me, Melissa, and maybe Uncle Raymond if he's in town. I should have known something was off. Melissa never wanted just the 4 of us. She preferred big gatherings where she could perform her role as the perfect daughter-in-law in front of an audience. But I was so hungry for my son's attention that I ignored the warning bells. I spent the afternoon of October 15th getting ready. I wore my navy blue dress, the one Thomas bought me for our 30th anniversary. Thomas, my husband, died of cancer 5 years ago at 59. Sometimes I still reach for him in bed at 3 in the morning when the house feels too empty. I drove my 2012 Honda Civic across town to Kenneth's house in the West Hills. They lived in a neighborhood I could never afford, even after 37 years teaching elementary school. The houses had names instead of just numbers. Theirs was called Seaview Cottage, though you couldn't see any sea from there, just other expensive houses climbing the hillside. Kenneth opened the door wearing the smile I remembered from his childhood. 38 years old, my boy, with Thomas's brown eyes and my stubborn chin. He hugged me tight, and for a moment, I forgot about all the months of distance, all the canceled Sunday lunches, all the phone calls that went to voicemail. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, and I heard real warmth in his voice. Melissa appeared behind him in a cream silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. She was 35, blonde, with the kind of beauty that looked expensive to maintain. "Linda, so wonderful to see you." She kissed the air near my cheek, and I smelled her perfume, something floral and aggressive. The dining room table was set with the Waterford crystal I'd given them as a wedding gift 7 years ago. $1,200 I'd saved for 6 months, wanting them to have something beautiful. The glasses caught the light from the chandelier, throwing little rainbows across the white tablecloth. Uncle Raymond arrived 10 minutes later. He was my late husband's younger brother, 62, with the same gentle manner Thomas had. Raymond had been checking on me since Thomas died, calling every Sunday, fixing things around my house in Laurelhurst without being asked. We sat down to eat. Melissa had made roasted chicken with herbs, garlic mashed potatoes, and green beans. Everything looked perfect, like a magazine photograph. She poured wine into the crystal glasses, a California Pinot Noir that Kenneth said cost $45 a bottle. "A toast," Kenneth said, raising his glass. "To Mom, who gave me everything." Past tense. Gave, not gives. The word hung in the air like smoke. I was reaching for my glass when my phone buzzed in my purse on the floor beside my chair. I almost ignored it. I'd learned to silence my phone during family gatherings after Melissa once said, "Linda, we're not your students. You don't need to be available 24/7. But something made me check. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way Melissa was watching me with those pale blue eyes that never seemed to blink quite enough. The message was from an unknown number. "Don't drink the glass she served." My heart stopped. I looked up. Everyone was watching me. Melissa's smile had frozen on her face like a mask. "Everything okay, Mom?" Kenneth asked. "Fine," I heard myself say. "Just Patricia checking in. You know how she worries." Patricia Morgan was my best friend since high school, 65 years old, retired nurse, the only person who'd stayed close after Thomas died and Kenneth got married. The lie came out smooth as butter. I pushed my wine glass slightly away, pretending to prefer water. Melissa's eyes narrowed, just for a second, but I saw it. The conversation continued around me like I was underwater. Kenneth talked about his work at the bank, some big promotion he was up for. Raymond asked about Melissa's physical therapy practice. She answered with her professional smile, the one that showed all her teeth but none of her thoughts. I couldn't stop looking at that wine glass. The dark red liquid inside looked innocent, festive, celebratory. "Mom, aren't you going to drink?" Kenneth asked. "We chose this wine specially for you. It's from that winery in Willamette Valley you always wanted to visit with Dad." The mention of Thomas felt like a punch. Kenneth knew exactly which emotional buttons to push. He'd learned from the best. I'd taught him how to read people when he was small, how to understand what they needed, how to give it to them. I just never thought he'd use those skills against me. "I'm feeling a bit off," I said carefully. "Maybe just water tonight." Melissa stood abruptly. "Oh, Linda, you can't feel off on your birthday. Let me get you some aspirin." She was already moving toward the kitchen. "Actually," I said, my voice sharper than intended, "Kenneth looks pale. Honey, are you feeling all right?" My son blinked, confused. "I'm fine, Mom. Why?" "Here, switch glasses with me," I said, reaching across the table before I could think better of it. "I'll drink yours instead. The lighting's different on that side. Maybe the wine looks more appealing over there." It was a stupid excuse. Everyone knew it. But I'd already made the switch, and Kenneth's glass was in front of me, and my original glass was in front of him. Melissa stopped in the kitchen doorway. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. "Mom, that's weird," Kenneth said, but he was already reaching for the glass I'd pushed toward him. That same automatic obedience he'd had as a child when I told him to eat his vegetables. Raymond was watching everything with the quiet attention of someone who noticed details. His eyes went from the glasses to Melissa to me. Kenneth lifted the glass to his lips. "Wait," Melissa started to say, but he'd already taken a long swallow. Then another. He was always a fast drinker, my boy, never one to sip. We made it through the salad course. Kenneth finished his wine, my wine, and asked for more. Melissa poured from the bottle with shaking hands I pretended not to notice. Raymond's phone rang, and he stepped into the hallway to take the call. That's when Kenneth's face changed. He touched his chest, frowning. "I feel strange." "Strange how?" I asked, already pushing back my chair. "Hot. Dizzy. My heart—" He stood up fast, knocking his chair over backward. "Something's wrong. Mom, something's really wrong." His words came out slurred. He stumbled, caught himself on the table. The wine glasses toppled, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. Then Kenneth collapsed. I was on my knees beside him, my hands on his face, screaming his name. His eyes rolled back. His body started convulsing. "Call 911, I shouted at Melissa. But she just stood there, frozen, her perfect face blank with shock, or something else. Raymond ran back in from the hallway and immediately started making the call. His voice was steady, giving the address, describing symptoms. I heard him say, "possible poisoning," and felt my world tilt sideways. Kenneth was dying. My son was dying in front of me, and I had made him drink that wine. Except I hadn't. I'd saved him, saved myself. Someone had tried to kill me, and Kenneth had taken my place. The next moments blurred together. Paramedics arrived. How fast they came, I'll never understand. They loaded Kenneth onto a stretcher, asking rapid questions I couldn't answer. What did he eat? What did he drink? Any allergies? Any medications? Then Melissa spoke for the first time since Kenneth collapsed. Her voice came out high and clear, cutting through the chaos. She did this. Linda gave him that wine. I saw her switch the glasses. She tried to kill him. Every person in that room turned to look at me. The female paramedic's expression changed from professional concern to suspicion. The male paramedic moved between me and the stretcher, physically blocking me from my own son. "Ma'am, please step back," he said, and his hand rested on something at his belt. Pepper spray, maybe. Or a taser. Raymond grabbed my arm, pulling me close. "Don't say anything," he whispered. Not one word. They took Kenneth away in the ambulance. Melissa rode with them, playing the devastated wife beautifully. She looked back at me once before the doors closed, and her expression was pure hatred. 2 police officers stayed behind. They asked me to sit down. They asked for my purse, my phone. They asked why I'd switched glasses with my son. I showed them the message. Don't drink the glass she served. Who sent this? the younger officer asked. He had a kind face, reminded me of some of my former students who'd grown up and joined the force. I don't know, I admitted. Unknown number. The older officer, a woman with gray streaks in her black hair, looked at me for a long moment. Mrs. Hayes, I need you to understand something. Your son just ingested a potentially lethal substance. The glass you gave him was originally in front of your seat. His wife has made a serious accusation. We need to take you to the station for questioning. Am I under arrest? My voice didn't sound like mine. Not yet, but we need answers. Raymond stepped forward. I'm going with her. Linda doesn't say anything without a lawyer present. The officers looked at each other. The woman nodded. That's her right. As they led me out to the police car, I looked back at Kenneth's house. The dining room lights blazed through the windows. I could see the table with its spilled wine and overturned chairs, the crystal glasses I'd bought with such hope, the ruins of a birthday dinner that was supposed to bring my family together. The October air smelled like rain and fallen leaves. My phone buzzed again in the evidence bag the police carried. Another message from that unknown number. The female officer read it aloud. I saw her put something in your glass. Check her purse. I'm so sorry I couldn't warn you sooner. The interrogation room at Portland Central Precinct smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. 4 hours I sat there, under fluorescent lights that made my skin look gray, answering the same questions in different orders while 2 detectives tried to find holes in my story. Detective Sarah Monroe was the lead. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, wedding ring with a small diamond that told me she understood working-class money. Her partner, Detective James Park, younger, took notes on a laptop that clicked like a nervous heartbeat. Mrs. Hayes, let's go through this one more time, Monroe said, her voice professionally patient. You received an anonymous text message warning you not to drink the wine your daughter-in-law served. Yes. And instead of calling the police, or asking questions, or refusing to drink, you switched glasses with your son. When she said it like that, it sounded insane. Maybe it was. I panicked, I said. I didn't know what else to do. The message said, she. I assumed it meant Melissa, but what if I was wrong? What if it was paranoia? What if you'd been planning this? Park interrupted. Poisoning your own son to frame your daughter-in-law? The accusation hung in the air like cigarette smoke. Raymond, sitting beside me, put his hand on my arm. My client has answered that question 6 times. Unless you're charging her with something, we're done here. Raymond had called a lawyer, a woman named Victoria Chen, who arrived at the station at 2 a.m. wearing a business suit and an expression that said she'd eaten cops for breakfast. She'd advised me to cooperate fully, but Raymond had appointed himself my personal guardian. Monroe's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and something shifted in her face. Excuse me, she said, and left the room. Park stayed, watching me with eyes that reminded me of my students when they thought I hadn't noticed them cheating on a test. That specific kind of guilty alertness. Mrs. Hayes, he said, his voice softer now that Monroe was gone. I have a mother who's 62. If someone tried to hurt her, I'd want to know why. Help me understand what's happening in your family. It was a good tactic. Kind, personal, disarming. I almost fell for it. My family, I said slowly, has been falling apart since my husband died. Kenneth pulled away. Melissa filled the space. I tried to hold on, but you can't force people to love you back. Did Melissa have a reason to want you dead? The question was so direct, it knocked the air from my lungs. Before I could answer, Monroe returned. Her expression had changed completely. No longer suspicious, now carefully neutral. Mrs. Hayes, your son is stable. He's in the ICU at OHSU Hospital. Relief hit me so hard I had to grip the edge of the table. Can I see him? Not yet. But I need to show you something. Monroe placed an evidence bag on the table between us. Inside was a small amber prescription bottle. We found this in Melissa Hayes' purse. Warfarin, 5 milligram tablets. Prescribed to a patient named Dorothy Simmons at the clinic where your daughter-in-law works. I stared at the bottle. Warfarin. Blood thinner. I knew that name. Thomas had been on it briefly after his surgery, before the cancer made everything else irrelevant. Dorothy Simmons doesn't exist, Monroe continued. We checked. The prescription was forged using your daughter-in-law's access to the clinic's system 3 weeks ago. Park turned his laptop around to show me a screen full of browser history. We have a warrant to search Melissa Hayes' electronic devices. This is from her personal laptop. Search history from the past 2 months. I read the list, my hands shaking. How much warfarin is lethal? Warfarin overdose symptoms. Do they test for warfarin in autopsy undetectable poisons for elderly? How long does warfarin stay in system? There's more, Monroe said quietly. She pulled out another sheet. Life insurance policy on Kenneth Hayes, $400,000. Beneficiary, Melissa Hayes, taken out 7 months ago. The room tilted. $400,000. My son's life, calculated to the penny. Kenneth never told me, I whispered. Did he tell you about the financial troubles? Park asked. What financial troubles? They exchanged glances. Monroe pulled out another document. Credit card statements, bank records, collection notices. Kenneth and Melissa owed $43,000 across 6 credit cards. Their mortgage was 3 months behind. There were angry letters from creditors. Threats of legal action. Your son is a bank manager, Monroe said. This kind of debt could cost him his job. The mortgage default could cost them their house. But $400,000 in life insurance? That solves everything. Especially, Park added, if the grieving widow also inherits from her husband's wealthy mother. I'm not wealthy, I said automatically. Then stopped. Wait, do they think I'm wealthy? Raymond made a noise that might have been a laugh or a sob. Linda, your house in Laurelhurst is worth almost $500,000. You have teacher's pension, Social Security, Thomas's life insurance payout. To someone drowning in debt, you look like a life raft. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Melissa hadn't just wanted to kill me. She'd wanted to kill me first, inherit my estate through Kenneth, then kill Kenneth and take the insurance money. A 2-stage plan that would have left her wealthy and sympathetic. The tragic young widow who lost both her husband and his mother to terrible accidents. The wine, I said. What was in the wine? Crushed warfarin tablets, Monroe answered. Enough to cause massive internal hemorrhaging. Your son's lucky. He only swallowed about a quarter of what was in that glass. The ER doctors gave him vitamin K, fresh plasma. He'll survive, but it was close. Where is Melissa now? In another interrogation room, with her lawyer. Monroe's expression hardened. She's claiming you've been harassing her for years. That you're jealous of her relationship with Kenneth. That you've been trying to break them up since the wedding. She says you must have planted the warfarin in her purse to frame her. That's ridiculous. She has text messages, Park interrupted, from you to Kenneth, asking questions about finances, about their marriage, about whether he's happy. She's framing them as evidence of your obsessive interference. I remembered those texts, worried messages from a mother who hadn't heard from her son in weeks. Normal concern twisted into something sinister through Melissa's lens. We also found something else, Monroe said. She pulled out a manila folder, opened it carefully. Inside were printed emails. Communication between Melissa Hayes and an attorney named Robert Kessler. They were discussing having you declared mentally incompetent. The words blurred on the page as I tried to read them. I caught phrases, diminished capacity, elderly confusion, financial abuse concerns, nursing home placement. She was building a legal case, Raymond said, his voice shaking with rage he was trying to control. If the poisoning didn't work, she had a backup plan. Get you declared incompetent, put Kenneth in charge of your finances, then drain your accounts legally. How long has this been going on? I asked. Monroe flipped through the emails. First contact with the attorney was 14 months ago, shortly after your husband's funeral. 14 months. Melissa had been planning my destruction for more than a year, smiling at family gatherings, calling me mom, hugging me with those cold arms while calculating how much my death was worth. The text messages, I said suddenly. The ones warning me. Can you trace them? Park shook his head. Burner phone, purchased with cash. Whoever sent them knew what they were doing. They didn't want to be identified, but they saved my life. They saved you both, Monroe corrected. If you'd drunk that wine, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. And if Kenneth had drunk the glass meant for him, he'd probably be dead. The door opened. A uniformed officer stuck her head in. Detective Monroe? The subject's attorney is asking for a deal. Monroe stood. Excuse me. She left again, and this time Park followed. Raymond and I sat alone in that terrible room with its metal table and its secrets spread across the surface like autopsy photos. My son's debt, my daughter-in-law's poison, the systematic destruction of our family, itemized and documented. Raymond, I said quietly, you knew something was wrong. That's why you came to dinner tonight, isn't it? Not just for my birthday. He was quiet for a long moment. Thomas asked me something before he died, made me promise. Promise what? To watch Melissa. Raymond looked at me with eyes full of guilt and grief. He didn't trust her, Linda. He tried to tell you, But you were so happy that Kenneth was happy. Thomas said to me, "If anything happens to me, Melissa is going to go after Linda next. Please don't let her hurt my wife." The revelation felt like a physical blow. Thomas knew? He suspected. He saw the way she looked at your house, your bank statements when they sat on the counter, your jewelry. He saw how she asked questions about your finances, your health insurance, your will. He told me he thought she was with Kenneth because of the inheritance potential. Why didn't anyone tell me? Thomas tried. You remember the fights you had in his last months? About Melissa? You thought he was being paranoid because of the pain medication. You said he was trying to ruin Kenneth's happiness because his own life was ending. I did remember. I'd been so angry at Thomas for criticizing Melissa, for suggesting she was manipulative, for asking me to change my will. I'd accused him of jealousy, of bitterness, of wanting to control me from beyond the grave. I'd chosen Melissa's version of reality over my dying husband's warnings. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "He understood," Raymond said. "He made me promise to keep evidence. So I started documenting, following Melissa sometimes when she said she was at work but wasn't, tracking her purchases when I could. 3 weeks ago, I saw her at a pharmacy in Gresham. That's 20 miles from their house, Linda. She bought anticoagulants, not warfarin, but similar. I couldn't prove she planned to use them on anyone, but I took photos." He pulled out his phone, showed me pictures. Melissa leaving a CVS, carrying a small bag, looking around nervously. Date, stamped September 23rd. "I should have gone to the police then," Raymond said. "But I hoped, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Thomas had been wrong. Maybe she had a legitimate reason." "You weren't wrong." Monroe returned, and this time she wasn't alone. Behind her came a man in an expensive suit. Melissa's lawyer, presumably. He looked annoyed. "Mrs. Hayes," Monroe said, "I'm going to need you to remain available for further questioning, but you're free to go for now. We have enough to hold Melissa Hayes on suspicion of attempted murder." The words didn't feel real. Attempted murder. My daughter-in-law. My son's wife. "Can I see Kenneth?" "He's still unconscious, but the doctors say he's stable. You can go to the hospital. But Mrs. Hayes..." Monroe's expression softened slightly. "When he wakes up, he's going to have questions. He's going to need time to process what his wife tried to do. To him, to you, be prepared for that to be difficult. Difficult. Such a small word for the destruction of everything Kenneth thought his marriage was. Raymond drove me to OHSU Hospital in his truck. Neither of us spoke during the 20-minute drive through Portland's dark streets. The rain had started. Typical October weather, washing the city clean of its daily dirt, but never quite managing to make it shine. The hospital smelled like every hospital I'd ever been in. Disinfectant and fear and that peculiar sterile sadness. Kenneth was in ICU room 412. Through the window, I could see him hooked to machines, his face pale against white sheets, looking younger than 38, looking like the boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. A nurse stopped me at the door. "Are you family?" "I'm his mother." She checked her chart. "He's stable, but sedated. The doctor wants him to rest through the night. You can sit with him if you'd like, but he won't wake up until morning at the earliest." I sat in the chair beside Kenneth's bed and took his hand. It was warm, alive, his pulse beating steadily against my fingers. My son, my baby, almost taken from me by the woman he'd chosen to love. "I'm sorry," I whispered to him. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry I didn't listen to your father. I'm sorry I pushed you toward her because I wanted you to be happy." His hand didn't squeeze back, but the monitors showed his heart beating, his lungs breathing, his body fighting to survive. At 3 a.m, my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. "Your son will wake up at dawn. He's going to ask for Melissa. Be ready to tell him the truth, but prepare yourself. He won't want to believe you. Also, check Kenneth's phone records from the last 6 months. There's something he needs to tell you about the money. Something he's been too ashamed to admit." I stared at that message until my eyes burned. Who was sending these? How did they know what Kenneth would do when he woke? What secret about money was I supposed to discover? Raymond had fallen asleep in the chair by the window, his head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Rain hit the window in waves. My phone buzzed again. Same number. "I promise I'll explain everything soon, but first, you need to know what Melissa was really after. It wasn't just your estate. There's a reason she needed that $400,000 insurance payout immediately. A reason she couldn't wait for a natural death or a slow inheritance. Kenneth is going to tell you. Listen to him. Don't judge him. He's a victim too. The messages stopped. I sat in that hospital room until dawn, holding my son's hand, waiting for him to wake up and tell me what other secrets our family had been keeping. Kenneth woke up at 6:47 a.m., exactly as the anonymous messenger had predicted. His eyes opened slowly, confused, scanning the hospital room like he didn't recognize where he was. Then they found me, sitting in the chair where I'd been for 7 hours straight, and something complicated crossed his face. Relief mixed with something else, something that looked like resentment. "Mom," he said, his voice scratchy from the breathing tube they'd removed an hour earlier. "What happened?" I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times during the night. Every version ended badly. "You were poisoned," I said simply. "At the dinner. The wine had warfarin in it." He blinked, processing. "Warfarin? But that's what they give people for blood clots. Why would—" His face went pale. "The glass. You switched our glasses." "Yes. So it was meant for you." Not a question. A realization. "Kenneth, there's something you need to know about Melissa. Where is she?" He tried to sit up, winced at the pain. "Is Melissa okay? Someone needs to tell her I'm awake. Where's my phone?" My heart cracked like ice on a frozen pond. Even now, after everything, his first thought was for her. "Kenneth, honey, Melissa is the one who put the warfarin in the wine." The words hung between us like a wall of glass. He stared at me for 5 long seconds. Then he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that didn't match the boy I'd raised. "That's insane. Mom, you've never liked her. I know that. But accusing her of trying to murder you? That's delusional." The police found the warfarin in her purse, forged prescription. They have her laptop with search history about poisons. They have emails where she was planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. "Kenneth, she's been arrested." "No." He shook his head violently, then stopped because it obviously hurt. "No, you did something. You planted evidence. You've been trying to break us up since the wedding, and now you've finally found a way." "Your father knew," I said quietly. "Before he died, Thomas saw what Melissa was. He tried to warn me, but I didn't listen. He asked Raymond to watch her, to protect me after he was gone. Raymond saw her buying anticoagulants 3 weeks ago. Uncle Raymond is in on this too?" Kenneth's voice rose, setting off alarms on his monitors. "Jesus Christ, Mom. You've turned the whole family against my wife because you can't stand that I chose someone over you." A nurse rushed in. "Mr. Hayes, you need to stay calm. Your blood pressure—" "Get out," Kenneth said to me. Not to the nurse. To me. "Mom, I want you to leave. Now." The nurse looked between us, uncomfortable. "Maybe it's best if—" I said, "Get out." Kenneth's shout echoed in the small room. I stood on shaking legs, grabbed my purse, walked to the door. At the threshold, I turned back. "I love you, Kenneth. When you're ready to hear the truth, I'll be here." "The truth?" He laughed again. That awful sound. "The truth is, you're a bitter old woman who can't accept that your son grew up and found someone who actually makes him happy. The truth is, you've been sabotaging my marriage for 7 years. The truth is, I wish I'd drunk that wine if it means I don't have to see you try to destroy the woman I love." Each word was a knife, clean, precise, designed to cut deep. I left before he could see me cry. Raymond was in the waiting room, holding 2 cups of hospital coffee that smelled like burnt rubber. He took one look at my face and didn't ask questions, just handed me a cup and guided me to his truck. We drove in silence to my house in Laurelhurst. The rain had stopped, leaving Portland washed and gray under October clouds. My house looked smaller than I remembered. The yellow Victorian paint faded, the garden roses dying back for winter. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it before the birthday dinner. The breakfast dishes I'd washed, the vacuum cleaner I'd put away, the outfit I'd tried on and rejected, still draped across my bed. A lifetime ago. 24 hours. Raymond made me actual coffee, the good kind I kept for guests, and scrambled eggs I couldn't eat. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Thomas and I had shared morning coffee for 35 years, and waited for me to speak. "He hates me," I finally said. "He's confused and scared. Give him time." Time for what? To realize his mother was right about his wife being a murderer? That's not something you bounce back from, Raymond. "No," he admitted. "It's not." My phone buzzed. I'd almost forgotten about the mysterious messenger. Unknown number. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. Kenneth will need approximately 3 days to process. In the meantime, you need to prepare for what comes next. Melissa's family is going to launch a campaign against you. They'll use social media, they'll spread rumors, they'll paint you as the villain. Don't engage. Document everything. And Linda, check your mailbox. There's something you need to see. I walked to the front door like a zombie, opened it, checked the brass mailbox mounted beside the porch light. Inside was a manila envelope with no return address, no postage. Someone had hand-delivered it. Inside were letters, written in Thomas's distinctive slanted handwriting, dated over the course of 3 years, 2015 to 2017, from when Kenneth first started dating Melissa until a few months before Thomas died. I carried them back to the kitchen table, spread them out with trembling hands. Raymond watched silently. November 2015. My dearest Linda, I'm writing this because I need to document my concerns where you might find them someday. Kenneth brought Melissa to dinner tonight. She's beautiful, charming, everything you've said, but I watched her eyes when you showed her the photographs of your mother's jewelry. Linda, she looked at those sapphires the way a jeweler appraises inventory, not with appreciation, with calculation. February 2016. Linda, Melissa asked me today how much our house is worth. She framed it as casual conversation, said she and Kenneth were thinking of buying in the neighborhood, wanted to know the market, but she pressed for details, square footage, property taxes, whether we have a mortgage. When I deflected, her smile never reached her eyes. July 2016. My love, I tried to tell you today that something feels wrong with Melissa. You got angry, said I was being paranoid, that I should be happy Kenneth found someone. Maybe you're right. Maybe the cancer is making me see shadows where there's only light. But I can't shake the feeling that she's playing a long game. That we're pieces on a board she's already 3 moves ahead on. December 2017. Linda, this will probably be my last letter. The doctors say I have 4 months, maybe 5. I'm not telling you because I don't want you to spend our last Christmas crying. But I need you to know. After I'm gone, Melissa is going to make her move. She's going to try to isolate Kenneth from you. She's going to position herself to inherit everything. Please, please be careful. I've asked Raymond to watch over you. Trust him when you don't trust anyone else. I love you. I'm sorry I won't be there to protect you. The dates blurred through my tears. Thomas had seen it all, had tried to warn me, and I'd dismissed him as a bitter, dying man who wanted to control me from the grave. How did these get here? I asked Raymond. I don't know. I found them in Thomas's office after he died. Saved them in case you ever needed proof. But I kept them at my house. Someone must have... He stopped. Someone broke into my house and took them. We stared at each other. The messages, I said slowly. Someone who knows everything. Who has access to evidence. Who can predict what's going to happen. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I didn't break in. Raymond gave me a key years ago when Thomas asked him to keep evidence safe. I'm someone who cared about Thomas. Someone who sees what Melissa is. Someone who's been watching this family fall apart and couldn't stay silent anymore. You'll know who I am soon. But first, turn on your computer. Melissa's sister just posted something you need to see. I opened my laptop on the kitchen table, hands shaking so badly Raymond had to type in my password. Facebook loaded slowly, and there it was, posted 20 minutes ago by Jennifer Lang, Melissa's younger sister. My sister is being persecuted by a jealous, unstable woman who has tried to destroy her marriage for 7 years. Linda Hayes poisoned her own son to frame my sister because she couldn't accept that her little boy grew up and found real love. The police are going to realize they arrested an innocent woman while the real criminal walks free. Shame on you, Linda Hayes. Shame. 347 shares already. Comments piling up from people I'd never met, calling me a monster, a psychopath, a bitter old hag who deserved to rot in jail. Someone had posted my address, my phone number, a photo of my house. Oh God, Raymond breathed. The doorbell rang. Through the front window, I could see a young woman with a camera, a news reporter. Behind her, a van with a local station's logo. My phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, over and over. I turned it off, but the doorbell kept ringing. The reporter knocked, shouted questions through the mail slot. Raymond closed all the curtains, locked the doors. We sat in my dim kitchen while strangers invaded my front yard, and the internet crucified me for trying to murder my own child. For 11 days, I didn't leave the house. Raymond brought groceries, picked up mail, stood guard like a soldier protecting a war zone. The reporters eventually left, but the online harassment continued. Someone created a fake Facebook profile in my name, posting racist rants. Someone else made a website dedicated to Justice for Melissa Hayes. My neighbors, people I'd lived near for 15 years, stopped making eye contact when they saw Raymond coming and going. Kenneth didn't call, didn't text. The hospital discharged him after 4 days, and according to Raymond's careful reconnaissance, he went home to the empty house he'd shared with Melissa, alone. I spent those days in a fog of grief and rage. I cleaned my house obsessively, scrubbing floors that didn't need scrubbing, organizing closets that were already organized. Anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from circling the same terrible thoughts. At night, I sat in Thomas's old recliner, the one I'd kept even though it didn't match the living room furniture, and read his letters over and over. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that he'd seen the truth, that I'd failed him by not seeing it too. On day 9, I found the photo album from Kenneth's childhood. Me teaching him to ride a bike. Thomas pushing him on a swing. The 3 of us at the coast, Kenneth building sandcastles, his smile gap-toothed and genuine. When had I lost that boy? When had he become someone who could look me in the eye and tell me he wished he'd drunk poison rather than talk to me? The answer was obvious. The day he met Melissa. On day 11, at 11:34 p.m., my phone rang. I'd turned it back on earlier that day, blocking the harassing numbers one by one until they finally stopped. Kenneth's name on the screen made my heart stop. "Mom," he said when I answered. His voice sounded hollow, wrecked. "I need to talk to you, not about Melissa, about the money, about what I did." The anonymous messenger's prediction, finally coming true. "I'm listening," I said. "Not on the phone. Can I come over?" "I know it's late, but I can't. I can't sleep until I tell you." 20 minutes later, my son sat across from me at the kitchen table where he'd done his homework as a boy, where he'd announced he was engaged, where we'd shared 1,000 meals. His face was gaunt, dark circles under his eyes, hands shaking as he held the coffee I'd made him. "Melissa didn't just want your money," Kenneth began. "She wanted it because of what I did, what I've been hiding from you for 2 years. He took a breath like a drowning man surfacing. "Mom, I embezzled $67,000 from the bank." Kenneth's hands wrapped around the coffee mug like he was trying to absorb its warmth into his bones. Outside, rain had started again, tapping against the kitchen windows with the persistence of unwanted truth. 2 years ago, he began, voice barely above a whisper, "I made a mistake at work. A big one. I approved a commercial loan without proper verification. The borrower had forged documents. When it defaulted, the bank lost $230,000. I watched my son's face as he spoke, seeing the shame carved into every line. They were going to fire me, report me to federal regulators. I'd never work in banking again. Melissa said she'd leave me if I lost my job. She'd just opened her physical therapy practice, couldn't afford to support us both." He laughed bitterly. I was desperate. "So you stole money to cover it up?" "Not exactly." Kenneth set down the mug, couldn't meet my eyes. "I had access to dormant accounts, customers who died, whose estates were in probate, that kind of thing. Small amounts that wouldn't be noticed immediately. I took $67,000 over 18 months, moved it around through temporary accounts, made it look like the loan was being repaid in installments. The exact amount Melissa had stolen from our joint emergency account. Not a coincidence." "Melissa knew," I said. Not a question. Kenneth nodded miserably. "She figured it out after 6 months. Found the account records I'd hidden. I thought she'd leave, or turn me in. Instead, she said she'd help me cover it up if I did something for her. What did she want? Access to your finances. She wanted me to convince you to add her name to your accounts, to update your will with her as executor. She said it was just in case something happened to you. Someone needed to be able to handle your affairs." He finally looked at me. "I knew it was wrong, Mom, but I was so scared of losing everything. My job, my marriage, my freedom. When did you realize she wanted more than access? The insurance policy." Kenneth's voice cracked. 7 months ago, she brought home papers for me to sign. Said it was just standard financial planning. I didn't read them carefully. I never did when Melissa handled paperwork. Then last month, I actually looked at the policy. $400,000 with her as sole beneficiary. I asked why so much? Why not you as beneficiary? And she said, He stopped, swallowed hard. She said older wives usually die first anyway, so there was no point making you beneficiary when I'd just have to change it later after you were gone. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. That's when I started suspecting, Kenneth continued. I went through her laptop when she was at work, found the search history about poisons, found emails with that lawyer about declaring you incompetent. I confronted her 2 weeks ago. What did she say? That I was paranoid, that the searches were for a crime novel she was thinking about writing, that the lawyer consultation was about her own mother's declining health. He rubbed his face with both hands. I wanted to believe her, Mom. God help me, I wanted it to be true. But you knew it wasn't. I knew. Kenneth's eyes filled with tears. And I did nothing. I told myself I was imagining things, that Melissa loved me, that you were fine and I was worrying about nothing. I let her plan your murder because I was too much of a coward to face what I'd married. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his confession settling between us like snow. The $67,000 from our joint account, I said carefully. Melissa took that too. Kenneth nodded. She said she needed it to pay off someone who'd discovered my embezzlement. Said if I didn't let her borrow it, I'd go to prison. I transferred it to her 3 months ago. She never paid anyone back, just spent it. On what? I don't know. Designer clothes, spa treatments. That trip to San Francisco, she said, was for a physical therapy conference. He laughed without humor. I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're a victim. I'm a criminal, Mom. I stole from my employer. I helped my wife plan your financial exploitation. I knew something was wrong at that dinner, and I still drank the wine because I didn't want to make a scene. His voice rose. I'm not a victim. I'm an accomplice. My phone buzzed on the table. Both of us jumped. Unknown number. Tell him about the burner phone, the one Melissa kept hidden in her car. Police haven't found it yet, but they need to. It has texts between her and someone else. Someone helping her plan this. I showed Kenneth the message. Who keeps sending these? He asked. I don't know, but they've been right about everything so far. I looked at him. Did Melissa have a burner phone? Kenneth went very still. She had an old iPhone in the glove compartment. Said it was for emergencies in case her regular phone died. I never thought... He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. We need to tell the police. Kenneth, if we tell them about the phone, they'll want to know how you know. Which means explaining the embezzlement. I don't care anymore. He pulled out his own phone. I'm done protecting myself while she gets away with attempted murder. Detective Monroe arrived 40 minutes later with Detective Park and a warrant to search Melissa's vehicle. Kenneth gave them the keys, told them where to find the hidden iPhone. While they worked, Monroe sat across from Kenneth in my living room and took his statement about the embezzlement. Every word was another nail in his professional coffin, but he spoke clearly, accepting responsibility for what he'd done. Mr. Hayes, Monroe said when he finished, this information changes the scope of our investigation significantly. We'll need to involve the FBI for the bank fraud. You understand you're likely facing federal charges? I understand. Why come forward now? Kenneth looked at me. Because my mother almost died protecting me from my own stupidity. Because I've spent 11 days in that house convincing myself Melissa was innocent while she was destroying my mother's reputation online. Because I'm done being a coward. Park returned carrying an evidence bag containing a phone. Found it exactly where he said. Passcode protected, but we'll get into it. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The passcode is 0415. Melissa's birthday. Check the texts from a contact saved as R. You'll find everything you need, I told Monroe. She looked at me sharply. Mrs. Hayes, who is sending you this information? I don't know, but they've been accurate about everything. Monroe took the phone from Park, tried the code. The phone unlocked. She scrolled for a moment, her expression darkening. Then she held it out so we could see the screen. Text thread with contact R, dated over 6 months. R. Did you talk to Kenneth about the insurance? Melissa. Done. He signed without reading. Idiot. R. And the old lady's will? Melissa. Working on it. She trusts him completely. Give me 2 months. R. We need the money by August. Clock is ticking. Melissa. I know. Poison is the cleanest option. Heart attack, stroke, something natural. R. What about the son? Melissa. He's useful until she's dead. After that, he's worth $400K. Kenneth made a sound like he'd been punched. Monroe scrolled further. There are over 300 messages. Detailed planning going back to March. Flight reservations to the Cayman Islands for 2 people. Bank account numbers. She looked up. Mrs. Hayes, we need to trace this number. Find out who R is. I can tell you who R is, said a voice from my doorway. We all turned. Patricia Morgan stood there. My best friend for 47 years. Retired nurse. The woman who'd been in my kitchen 1,000 times and never needed to knock. She was holding her own phone, face drawn, but resolute. Patricia? I whispered. R is Robert Kessler, she said, walking into the living room like she was approaching a gallows. The lawyer Melissa hired. He's also her lover. Has been for 3 years. Monroe stood. How do you know this? Patricia looked at me, eyes filled with tears and something that might have been guilt, because I'm the one who's been sending Linda the messages. I'm the one who saw Melissa put poison in the wine. I'm the one who saved her life. The room went silent except for the rain against the windows. I've been following Melissa for 18 months, Patricia continued. Ever since I saw her meeting with a man who wasn't Kenneth at a hotel in Vancouver. I'm a nurse, was a nurse. I know what warfarin looks like, what it does. When I saw her crushing tablets at that dinner, I knew exactly what she was doing. Why didn't you call the police? Monroe asked. Because Linda wouldn't have believed me without proof. Because Kenneth would have chosen Melissa over his mother, and they'd have cut Linda out of their lives completely. Because I needed Linda to see the truth with her own eyes, even if it meant risking. Her voice broke. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I waited until the last second. I thought I had more time to gather evidence. I almost got you both killed. I stood, crossed to her, pulled her into a hug. You saved my life. I should have told you months ago what I suspected. I wouldn't have believed you. I held her tight, just like I didn't believe Thomas. Monroe cleared her throat. Ms. Morgan, I need you to come to the station and make a formal statement. Everything you know about Robert Kessler, every detail of what you witnessed. Patricia nodded against my shoulder. One more thing, Monroe added. How did you get into Raymond's house to retrieve Thomas's letters? Raymond gave me a key years ago. Thomas asked him to, said if anything happened to him, I should make sure Linda had access to anything that might protect her. Patricia pulled back, wiped her eyes. Thomas knew Melissa would make her move eventually. He asked both of us to watch over Linda. We just didn't realize how far Melissa would go. My phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. I'm turning this phone off now. You don't need me anymore. You have the truth, the evidence, and most importantly, you have your son back. Tell him he can still make this right. Tell him you forgive him. And Linda, Thomas would be proud of you. He always knew you were stronger than you believed. I looked at Kenneth, broken and crying in my living room, facing prison for crimes he'd committed trying to save himself from a woman who'd planned to kill him. Mom, he whispered, can you ever forgive me? The question hung between us like a bridge waiting to be crossed. I didn't answer Kenneth's question that night. How could I? Forgiveness isn't a light switch you flip on because someone asks nicely. It's a door you open slowly, checking for traps. Instead, I made him more coffee, put a blanket over his shoulders when he started shaking, and let him sleep on my couch like he used to do during college breaks. Some things mothers do without thinking. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Melissa's lawyer, a different one, since Robert Kessler had been arrested as her co-conspirator, tried for a deal, manslaughter instead of attempted murder, claim it was a moment of desperation, not premeditation. The prosecutor laughed in his face. The evidence was overwhelming. The burner phone texts, the forged warfarin prescription, the internet search history, the life insurance policy, the emails about declaring me incompetent, Melissa's carefully constructed plan, documented in her own digital handwriting. Kenneth had been released on bail after his confession, pending federal investigation of the bank fraud. His lawyer said cooperation might reduce his sentence, but he was still looking at 3 to 5 years minimum. He'd moved back in with me temporarily. His house had been foreclosed, Melissa's physical therapy practice had collapsed, and he had nowhere else to go. Living with my son again after everything felt like wearing a coat that no longer fit right, too tight in some places, too loose in others. We moved around each other carefully, speaking in polite half-sentences, both of us waiting for something neither could name. Patricia visited daily, bringing groceries, helping me prepare for the trial, apologizing endlessly for not acting sooner. I thought I had more time, she kept saying. I thought I could gather enough evidence that you wouldn't have to go through any of this. You saved my life, I told her for the 100th time. Stop apologizing. Raymond came less often. Kenneth's presence made him uncomfortable. I kept Thomas's secrets, he told me privately. But watching Kenneth in your house after what he did, it's hard not to want to shake some sense into him. He's getting plenty shaken by reality, I said. The morning of the hearing, Kenneth came downstairs in a borrowed suit. His own had been sold along with everything else. He looked hollow, decades older than 38. Mom, I don't think I can go in there, he said. You have to. You're testifying. I know, but seeing her, his voice cracked. I loved her. For 7 years, I loved her, and it was all fake. Not all of it, I said, surprising myself. She wouldn't have worked this hard to trap you if you weren't useful. That's a kind of love, a poisonous, selfish kind. But she chose you specifically. That means something. That's the most depressing comfort I've ever heard. It's the only honest one I have. The Multnomah County Courthouse was everything justice buildings always are. Cold marble, harsh lighting, the institutional smell of fear and bureaucracy. Patricia sat on one side of me, Raymond on the other. Kenneth sat 3 rows ahead with the prosecution team. When they brought Melissa in, I barely recognized her. Prison orange instead of designer silk. Hair pulled back harshly, no makeup. The expensive beauty stripped away to reveal something harder underneath. She looked at Kenneth first, one long, calculating look that made him shrink in his seat. Then her eyes found me. Pure hatred, no mask left to hide behind. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Elizabeth Warren, no relation to the senator, she always said, laid out the case methodically. The warfarin, the insurance policy, the burner phone messages, 300 text messages plotting murder like someone planning a dinner party. The defendant, Warren said, didn't just want Linda Hayes dead. She wanted to profit from that death, then kill her own husband and profit again. This wasn't passion or desperation. This was a business plan. Melissa's lawyer, a nervous young man named Cooper, tried to paint her as a victim of circumstance, financial pressure, an abusive relationship with Robert Kessler, mental health struggles. My client admits she made terrible mistakes, Cooper said. But this was a cry for help, not a calculated murder plot. Then they called Kenneth to testify. I watched my son walk to the witness stand, place his hand on the Bible, swear to tell the truth. His voice shook but stayed clear as he described everything. The embezzlement, Melissa's discovery of it, her manipulation, the insurance policy he'd signed without reading. Did you know your wife was planning to kill your mother? Warren asked. I suspected something was wrong. I found evidence on her laptop, but I didn't want to believe it. I chose willful ignorance over protecting my mother. Kenneth looked at me. That's something I'll regret every day for the rest of my life. Melissa's lawyer cross-examined aggressively. Mr. Hayes, isn't it true you're testifying against your wife to reduce your own federal sentence? Yes. Isn't it possible you're fabricating this narrative to make yourself look like a victim rather than an accomplice? No. Everything I said is documented. The texts, the emails, the insurance policy, it's all real. You claim you loved your wife, yet you're throwing her away to save yourself. Kenneth's jaw tightened. I did love her. That's what makes this so hard. But she tried to kill my mother. She planned to kill me. Love doesn't survive that. Cooper didn't have a response to that. They called Patricia next. She described seeing Melissa crush pills at the dinner, sending the warning messages, following Melissa for 18 months. Why didn't you call the police when you first suspected? Cooper asked. Because suspicion isn't proof. I needed evidence that would hold up in court. And I needed Linda to see the truth herself. Melissa had spent years turning Kenneth against his mother. If I'd accused Melissa without ironclad proof, Kenneth would have cut Linda out of his life completely. So you endangered Linda Hayes to protect her relationship with her son? I endangered no one. I saved her life the second I saw actual danger. The jury watched Patricia with the kind of respect you give someone who's clearly not playing games. Then they called me. Walking to that witness stand felt like walking underwater. Every eye in the courtroom tracked me. Melissa's gaze followed like a physical weight. Warren's questions were straightforward. What happened at the dinner? When did I receive the warning? Why did I switch glasses? What was my relationship with Melissa before this? I tried to love her, I said. I wanted her to be the daughter I never had. I ignored warning signs because I wanted my son to be happy. I chose his happiness over my own instincts. Did you ever suspect Melissa wanted to harm you? Not until I read my husband's letters. He knew. He tried to warn me. I didn't listen. My voice broke. I spent 5 years angry at my dying husband for trying to tell me the truth. Cooper's cross-examination was brutal. He pulled up the texts I'd sent Kenneth. Worried messages asking about finances, about his marriage, about whether he was happy. Mrs. Hayes, these texts show a pattern of interference in your son's marriage. They show a pattern of a mother worried about her son, or a controlling mother who couldn't let go. If wanting to protect my son from someone who planned to murder him is controlling, then I'm guilty. Cooper changed tactics. Isn't it true you have significant assets? A house worth nearly $500,000? Teacher's pension? Insurance money from your late husband? Yes. So you had motive to get rid of a daughter-in-law who might inherit those assets. I had motive to stay alive. Melissa had motive to kill me. The prosecutor objected. The judge sustained. But the point was made. Finally, they called Melissa herself. She took the stand with manufactured dignity, the performance of someone who'd practiced in the mirror. Her voice came out soft, wounded, the victim she was pretending to be. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," she began. "I was in an impossible situation. Robert convinced me that Linda was going to cut Kenneth out of her will, that we needed to protect ourselves financially. He said the warfarin was just to make her sick, force her to rely on us, show her she needed us. It was a masterwork of deflection. Blame the arrested co-conspirator, claim manipulation, play the innocent. Warren didn't buy it. Ms. Hayes, you texted Robert saying poison is the cleanest option. That sounds like murder, not making someone sick. That was taken out of context. You also texted after that, he's worth $400K, referring to your husband. How is killing your husband out of context? Melissa's mask slipped. Just for a second, her eyes went cold and flat. I was angry. I say things I don't mean when I'm angry. You researched lethal doses. You forged prescriptions. You took out a life insurance policy without your husband's knowledge. That's not anger. That's planning. I want to speak to Linda, Melissa said suddenly, turning to look at me directly. Linda, I know you think I'm a monster, but I cared about Kenneth. I cared about our family. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but You never what? I interrupted, standing up before I could stop myself. Never crushed warfarin into my wine? Never texted your lover about murdering me and my son? Never spent 18 months plotting to steal everything my husband and I built? The judge banged his gavel. Mrs. Hayes, please sit down. But I couldn't stop. You called me Mom. You hugged me. You sat in my kitchen and ate my food and smiled at me while planning my death. Don't you dare ask me to believe you cared about anything except money. Order! The judge's voice cut through the courtroom. Mrs. Hayes, sit down now, or you'll be removed. Raymond pulled me back into my seat. My whole body was shaking. Melissa's eyes stayed locked on mine, and this time there was no mask at all. Just cold calculation and rage that she'd been caught. The prosecutor rested. The defense rested. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman read the verdict in a clear voice that echoed through that cold marble room. On the charge of attempted murder of Linda Hayes, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder of Kenneth Hayes, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Melissa didn't react, just stood there, stone-faced, while her lawyer sagged beside her. The judge scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. Outside the courthouse, on those granite steps where winter sun couldn't quite warm the stone, Kenneth turned to me. Mom, I need to know. Can you forgive me? Not now, maybe not ever completely, but someday. Is there any chance? I looked at my son. At the man who'd embezzled money, who'd married a monster, who'd chosen cowardice over courage, but had finally found the strength to tell the truth when it mattered most. I don't know, I said honestly. Ask me again in a year, and then maybe another year after that. Forgiveness isn't a moment, Kenneth. It's 1,000 small moments of choosing to keep trying. He nodded slowly. That's fair. That's more than fair. But I can tell you this, I added. I love you. That never stopped, even when I wanted it to. Even when you told me you wished you'd drunk poison rather than talk to me. You're my son. That doesn't change because you made terrible choices. Kenneth's face crumpled. He pulled me into a hug on those courthouse steps, and I held him while he cried, this broken man who'd once been my little boy. Patricia and Raymond stood nearby, giving us space but staying close enough to catch us if we fell. Families, I realized, don't break cleanly. They shatter in complicated ways, leaving sharp edges that take years to smooth. But sometimes, if you're willing to bleed a little, you can piece something new together from the fragments. Maybe not what you had before, but something that might, eventually, be enough. Melissa received 12 years. No parole eligibility for 8. Robert Kessler got 10 for conspiracy and fraud. The judge's words echoed in that courtroom like a final benediction. You didn't just try to take a life. You tried to dismantle a family for profit. Kenneth pleaded guilty to federal bank fraud 3 weeks later. The judge, considering his cooperation and genuine remorse, sentenced him to 18 months in minimum security, followed by 3 years supervised release and full restitution to the bank. His lawyer called it a miracle. Kenneth called it getting what he deserved. I visited him once before he reported to the facility in Sheridan, Oregon. We sat in my kitchen, that same table where he'd confessed, where we'd shared 10,000 meals, where our family had slowly died and was now trying to figure out how to live again. "I'm going to write you," he said, "every week. I know you might not write back, but I need you to know I'm thinking about you, that I'm working on becoming someone you can be proud of again." "I was always proud of you," I said, "even when I was furious, even when you broke my heart. You're my son. That doesn't come with conditions. Love without trust isn't much of a foundation." "No," I agreed, "but trust can be rebuilt. It just takes longer than love." He left the next morning. Patricia drove him to the prison. I couldn't do it. Couldn't watch them process my boy like inventory. Instead, I stayed home and cried for 3 hours straight. The kind of crying that empties you out until you're hollow and clean. With the $67,000 Kenneth paid back from the court-ordered restitution, I did something Thomas would have loved. I established the Thomas Hayes Financial Literacy Fund at Portland Community College, a scholarship for students who wanted to study finance or accounting with mandatory ethics courses attached. "Teach them what Kenneth should have learned," I told the college president. "That money without integrity is just numbers on paper." The first recipient was a 19-year-old named Maria, whose father had embezzled from his employer and was serving time in the same facility as Kenneth. She came to my house to thank me, this small, fierce girl with haunted eyes. "My dad made mistakes," she said, "but he's still my dad. Thank you for understanding that people can be both." After she left, Patricia found me crying in the kitchen again. Good tears or bad tears? I don't know anymore, I admitted. Maybe there's no difference. Raymond stopped by most Sundays, always with flowers, always with some small repair project he'd found that needed doing. We didn't talk about Melissa or Kenneth much. What was there to say? Instead, we talked about Thomas, remembering him without the shadow of betrayal hanging over the memories. "He'd be so proud of you," Raymond said one afternoon while fixing my porch railing. "The way you handled everything, the fund, the forgiveness, all of it. I'm not sure forgiveness is the right word. It's more like acceptance. Isn't that what forgiveness is? Accepting that people are complicated and broken, and sometimes they hurt you anyway." I thought about that for a long time. Kenneth's letters started arriving like clockwork every Tuesday. Long letters, sometimes 10 pages, describing his days, his therapy sessions, the financial literacy classes he was teaching to other inmates. He wrote about the men he was meeting, embezzlers like him, men who'd made one catastrophic choice and spent years paying for it. "Mom," one letter read, "there's a guy here named Marcus who stole $40,000 to pay for his daughter's cancer treatment. Another named David who took money because his wife was dying and needed experimental treatment insurance wouldn't cover." I'm not saying what they did was right, but I'm learning that desperation makes people do things they never thought possible. I was desperate to keep my job, my marriage, my life from falling apart. I chose wrong. But I understand now why I chose. That's something. I wrote back. Short letters at first, just a few lines, then longer ones, telling him about the scholarship fund, about Patricia's new volunteer work at the senior center, about Raymond's latest carpentry project, building a bridge back to each other, one paragraph at a time. 6 months after the sentencing, I went back to that fancy restaurant in West Hills, where Melissa had always insisted we celebrate special occasions, the place where she'd performed the role of grateful daughter-in-law, while calculating my worth in dollars and cents. I sat at the same table, ordered the same wine, Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley, and toasted Thomas's memory with a glass I drank myself. The waiter was the same young man who'd served us countless times, who'd watched Melissa touch Kenneth's hand while ignoring me completely. He recognized me. "Ma'am, I heard about, I saw the news. I'm so sorry for everything you went through." "Don't be sorry," I told him. "I survived. That's worth celebrating." He brought me dessert on the house, chocolate torte with raspberry sauce. I ate every bite. 8 months in, Kenneth called me for the first time. The prison allowed one 15-minute call per week, and he'd been too ashamed to use his until now. "Mom, I got accepted into a remote bachelor's degree program through OSU, business ethics. They're letting me complete coursework from here. When I get out, I'll have actual credentials in the one thing I failed at completely. That's wonderful, honey. There's something else." His voice got quieter. "I've been going to this support group here, for people who were manipulated by partners. And I'm starting to understand. Mom, Melissa groomed me. From the beginning. She found someone desperate to prove himself, someone with access to money, someone with a mother who had assets. She picked me specifically because I was vulnerable. Does that change how you feel about what you did? No, I'm still responsible for my choices. But it helps me understand why I made them. Does that make sense? More than you know. A year after the trial, Patricia and I took a trip to the Oregon coast, something we'd been planning since high school and never quite managed. We stayed in a tiny motel in Cannon Beach, walked for miles on sand that stretched forever, watched the sunset paint the rocks gold and orange. I should have told you sooner, Patricia said on our last night, both of us bundled in blankets on the motel balcony. About Melissa, about what I suspected. If you'd told me, I wouldn't have believed you. I had to see it myself. Still, I put you in danger. You saved my life. Stop carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you. She was quiet for a moment. Thomas asked me right before he died to watch over you, made me promise, said Melissa was going to come after you and he needed someone to catch her when she did. I told him he was being paranoid. I'm sorry I doubted him. We all doubted him. That's what manipulators do. They make you doubt your own instincts until you can't trust anything. The waves crashed below us, constant and cleansing. 14 months after Kenneth entered prison, I went to visit him for the first time. The facility in Sheridan was nothing like the prisons on TV. Low buildings, minimal security, men who looked more like accountants than criminals, which, I suppose, most of them were. Kenneth met me in the visiting area, and for a moment, I didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight, gained muscle from the prison gym, cut his hair short, but more than that, something in his face had changed. The softness was gone. What remained looked harder, but more honest. You came, he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. Of course I came. We sat across from each other at a bolted-down table, surrounded by other inmates and their families, and talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. His classes, my garden, Patricia's new boyfriend, a widower from her book club, Raymond's latest carpentry project, normal things, family things. At the end of visiting hours, before the guards called time, Kenneth asked the question he'd been building toward. Mom, do you think, when I get out, do you think we can have dinner? Maybe not at your house, somewhere neutral, somewhere without all the memories. I thought about that dinner table in my kitchen, the one where he'd confessed, where Melissa had plotted, where Thomas and I had raised him with so much hope. How about we have dinner at my house? I said. Same table, same dishes, but this time I'll serve juice instead of wine, and you'll help me cook, and we'll make new memories on top of the old ones. His eyes filled with tears. You'd let me back in, after everything? Kenneth, you were never fully out. Forgiveness isn't a door that slams shut. It's a door that stays open even when it's hard, even when every instinct says to lock it. I reached across the table, took his hand. You're my son. That means something. It means I keep choosing you even when you make it difficult. None of us deserve the love we get. We just have to be worth it. And you're working on being worth it. That's enough. He came home 4 months later, on a Tuesday in June when the roses in my garden were blooming yellow and pink. Patricia picked him up, brought him to my house where Raymond and I were waiting. We had dinner that night, the 4 of us. At that same oak table, I'd made roasted chicken with herbs, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans, the same meal Melissa had served at the birthday dinner that changed everything. But this time, the food tasted different, honest, real. Kenneth helped me cook, learning the recipes I'd made for him his whole life, but had never taught him to make himself. We set the table together, using everyday dishes instead of crystal. I poured juice, apple cider, sparkling, celebratory, into simple glasses. Before we ate, Kenneth stood up. I want to say something. Mom, Raymond, Patricia, you had every right to walk away from me, to decide I wasn't worth the effort, but you didn't. You stayed. You fought for me when I didn't deserve it. I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning that loyalty. Just be honest, I said. That's all I ask. No more secrets, no more lies, just truth, even when it's ugly. Deal. We clinked our juice glasses together, the sound not quite as musical as crystal, but real. Solid. True. 2 years after the poisoning, I stood in my garden on an October morning, pulling weeds from around the rose bushes Thomas had planted 20 years ago. My phone buzzed, Kenneth sending his daily text. Just a simple good morning, Mom. Love you, I texted back. Love you too. Come for dinner Sunday? I'll bring dessert. Patricia called an hour later to ask if I wanted to catch a movie. Raymond texted about a broken cabinet hinge he'd noticed last visit. My life, rebuilt from fragments. Not perfect. Not what I'd imagined during those 40 years with Thomas. But real. Mine. Earned through surviving the worst betrayal I could imagine and choosing every single day not to let it destroy me. The question people always ask, did you really forgive him? The honest answer? I don't know. Forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's a garden you tend every day, pulling weeds, watering carefully, watching for what grows. Some days I look at Kenneth and see the man who confessed, who testified, who's working to rebuild himself. Other days I see the boy who chose his wife over warning his mother about danger. Both are true. People contain multitudes. The better question is, are you happy? And to that, I can finally say yes, not the happiness I had before. That innocence is gone. But a harder, wiser happiness built on truth instead of illusion, on acceptance instead of expectation. I survived. My son survived. We're building something new from the wreckage. That's enough.